Coming to you from high atop our studios in the San Francisco Bay Area, you're listening to Tech Move. This is episode 46. In today's show, Rod talks about a rookie mistake he made during a photo shoot and how to avoid it the next time. We also talk all new products. We'll share about items like the GoPro Hero 7, DJI Mavic 2 Pro, the Aputure 120D2, and what ends up turning into a lengthy review of the brand new Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. I'm Rod Louie, and with me is Keith Moreau. Get ready. It's time for another exciting episode of Tech Move. Let's go! Welcome again to episode 46. It is Tech Move, and I am Rod Louie, and joined as always by the lovely and attractive Keith Moreau. Keith, how are you today?
Very good, Rod. Thank you. How are you?
Oh, doing very, very well, and it's good to get another episode going here. Mm-hmm. And, you know, as always in our intros, we always like to talk about kind of new things that have hit either the market or our own closet space for things that we've obtained or whatever it is. Yes. And I want to start off with something that's very, very, in our production meetings that you and I hold almost on an hourly basis, so on and so forth. There are a nice collection of lenses that we should maybe talk about. And of course, for me, selfishly, it's very interesting because they are of the Micro Four Thirds ilk, if you will.
Yes.
Let's start off and go ahead and tease us a little bit, and maybe we can get into some of the specifics. Share with us some of the, is it one lens? Is it two? Is it like a, did you buy them out of the trunk of a car from some guy who was passing by? What's the deal here?
Okay, so the deal is that I have two GH5s. I've got the regular GH5 and then the GH5S.
Yep.
And I like them a lot. They're good for certain things. The quality is, upped from the previous level, and they have good points. Good points, not too many negatives. And so I just was searching for more native Micro Four Thirds lenses because I don't have a lot of them. I do this adapting thing.
Oh yeah, I do, right? I mean,
right.
we're using the Metabones, we're using the Viltroxes, the Sigma adapters, all this kind of stuff that's out there.
Right. So, but the thing is when you get an actual native Micro Four Thirds lens, it's way lighter and smaller.
Yep.
It's like a half or third the size for almost the same performance. Well, maybe not the same performance from a light gathering point of view if you use a speed booster. But as far as lens sharpness and stuff like that, and sometimes if you adapt lenses without a speed booster, if you just have like the straight hole with no adapter with no speed booster type lens in it, it actually, depending on the lens quality of your EF glass or whatever larger glass you have put on there, it will it kind of magnifies the center of the glass. So instead of using the whole glass, which it's designed for, say, a full frame camera, you're using like the middle section, like a pretty small part of the middle section of that glass.
Right.
And usually that's okay because that part of the glass is usually the best. It's usually most free from errors and chromatic aberration and all kinds of bad things that lenses get. But the actual glass itself was designed for a full frame sensor. And therefore, you might be magnifying imperfections in the glass that it just wasn't intended to be used that way. So when you use a native Micro Four Thirds glass, you're not. It's covering the whole. It's meant to cover the whole image sensor and not much more beyond it. So it's in a way, its sharpness and quality is optimized for that size of a lens. The precision might be a little bit higher because it's designed for a smaller sensor. So that's another reason. So basically lightness, and the fact that maybe the lens will be slightly higher quality if you're not using a speed booster, and even if you are, because speed boosters have inherent, problems to them as well. They're not perfect. And also maybe native focusing and other things that make it work just better on a GH type camera, a Micro Four Thirds camera. So that's my reasoning. That's how I justify it.
Let's face it too. If you get some lenses that are specifically made for Micro Four Thirds, they just seem to work a little bit better, don't they? I mean, like even I could tell using the GH4, right? Like the native, even the native, kit lenses, that they just seem to focus a lot faster. They just seem to work in time a lot easier than if you're adapting something. And look, hey, the adapting is great. I really can't live without it. But there's just something about something that's built for that particular platform.
Yeah, I think just in general, especially the autofocus stuff.
Yep.
I think that's the big one.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think the autofocus will just work better with a native lens. and I think it's possibly because there's just a certain, well, first of all, the metabones or whatever you're using to adapt it, it has to translate this incoming signal from the lens and translate it into the camera's native signal. And so it's taking an EF type electronic signal. It's basically a bunch of data. It's like a protocol saying, a bunch of digital data, and it's translating that on the fly to something that the camera understands. The Micro Four Thirds Panasonic camera, whatever Micro Four Thirds system you're using. And, that just takes time. It's kind of like, imagine, instead of throwing a bucket of water on a fire with one person, you're taking the bucket of water from whatever, the lake or whatever, and you're handing it to another person, and then that person has to throw the bucket of water on the fire. So that's going to take time.
Yeah.
So you might, your log cabin might burn down before the.
Right.
Is that a good analogy? I don't know. Anyway.
You know what? It's good enough. All I know is that native lenses are just, even if it's just a smidgen better, it's still better.
Yeah. It is. It has to be better. It has to be better. And there's just other things too, like no matter how good these adapters are, they introduce slight imperfections.
Right.
So
Exactly.
the little, all the machining and all that stuff, it can't be 100% perfect. It's a little bit off. Maybe not enough so it really matters that much, but it could be a little bit off so it matters a little bit, like just the flange distance and whether it's completely square to the lens. And then other things like power requirements, right? Because this adapter has to it needs power to actually work. It's got electronics in it and stuff.
Right.
So that's taking extra power drain from the camera. It might be slight, it might be minimal, but again, it's adding just a little bit more stress to the camera system.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess all things being equal, if you can use a native lens, it's probably better in a lot of ways. I think one of the big advantages, though, of using an adapter is the speed booster aspect of it. You can get at least APS-C results out of a lens, out of a larger lens when you do a speed booster, and that gives you a lot more light. Gives you a wider field of view. So that part of it is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So anyway,
great.
Yeah. So getting back to what I got, there happened to be a kind of awesome sale at B&H, and so what happened was I looked at it, and these lenses they're not cheap lenses. I have to say, these are up there. So I'm just gonna look at the what I paid and stuff. I'm gonna look at the invoices and see what I got on them. Yeah, so they were basically like $200 to $400 off these lenses. Okay, so
which is pretty good for lenses.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah. So what I wound up getting a nice. These are all Panasonic branded lenses, but Panasonic and Leica have a partnership. So Leica's a German company, and Panasonic's a Japanese company, but they have a partnership. So I'm not quite sure where the lenses are made, in Japan or Germany, but Leica has some supervision over the design and manufacture. So, and Leica's kind of like a huge name in lenses and quality. So I don't know if it's just a badge, like Leica just gets $1 per lens to slap on their name, or
right.
But anyway, it does denote some quality. So one of the first lens I got is the Panasonic Leica DG Vario-Elmarit 8-18 zoom lens.
So it's an 8mm to 18mm. Is that what
right.
it is?
Yeah. So pretty wide. So so the full frame equivalent will be kind of similar to a 16 to 36 lens. So a little bit wider than, say, the Sigma 18 to 35 that we like.
Yep.
So that's kind of the equivalent of that.
I'm looking at it right now. It is a it's an f2.8 to 4.
Right. So at the widest aperture, it is 2.8.
Yep.
I mean, at the widest zoom, it's 2.8, and then as you zoom in to 18, it gets to 4. That's how a lot of lenses are.
Yeah.
Yep. It's really hard to design a completely fixed aperture or non-changing aperture lens in a zoom. Right. They exist. It's just a lot harder.
Yep.
So anyway, this one, I think I got it for like $900, and I think it goes for like $1,200 or $1,300. It was a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
So I actually haven't tested that too much, but I'm about to. Another lens that I got is a kind of an interesting lens. It's the Leica DG Nocticron 42.5 millimeter. The thing that's cool about this is it's an f1.2, and it's a power. It's a optically stabilized lens.
Oh, so that will work quite beautifully with the GH5S, which does not have image stabilization, I believe.
Yes. And unfortunately, it's hard to find that many Micro Four Thirds stabilized lenses that aren't zooms, but this is one of the few that are. So it's a bit on the telephoto side. So this would be maybe for portrait.
Yeah, this is a 42.5 millimeter, which kind of means that it's like about close to 90 millimeter. Would that be right?
It's like 85.
Yeah.
Depending on the camera you put on, it's probably a little bit less on the GH5S.
Yeah.
But still nice to have a power. And this is basically a portrait lens. You'd slap this one on, and since it's got O.I.S, you could do some nice shallow depth of field. I mean, you'd get some pretty amazing shallow depth of field with this lens.
At a 1.2, it ought to look fantastic.
Yeah. And that one I got for like $1,200, and I think it's like way higher than that. And then there's this lens, which actually I like a lot. I have this on a camera right now, and I've been kind of testing it. And it's the Leica DG Summilux 12 millimeter f1.4. So this one I really love the image. It's pretty wide. It's kind of like a 24 millimeter.
I see that. Yeah, it's about 24 millimeter, 1.4. Ooh, yeah, that's nice. Looks light too.
Yeah, this is the one you're looking at. A 12 millimeter or 24?
12 millimeter.
Yeah,
it's 12 mil, but a 24 millimeter equivalent.
Yeah. It's kind of like the standard wide lens if you're going to full frame. But it is small and light, and that's what I really love about it. And the image is superb. So, love these lenses. They will get a lot of use, I'm sure. Not sure if they're running gun lenses, except maybe for the wide zoom. But because but still, I'm sure they're going to have a lot of use for these cameras. I feel like I can use the ones without O.I.S on the regular GH5 because it's got body stabilization, and then I'll have to just have something kind of stabilized for the other lenses that aren't IS enabled, and put it on a gimbal, or just have a really good rig, or have it on a tripod.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway,
that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I like those. And okay, so like, okay, now I'm going off of like my, my new baby, the Sigma Art, right? Which
Yes.
is a fairly heavy lens,
Yes.
and it covers
Yes.
a lot of ground.
Yes.
Give me a comparison on weight versus that type of lens.
Oh, wow. It's so much lighter.
Oh,
I
I'll
mean,
bet.
Yeah. Like, basically, you don't even know they're there compared to the... First of all, they're shorter, right? So you don't have that. You don't have the adapter on there. And then just the weight of the lens. The art lenses tend to be really heavy.
Yeah.
And I guess it's because they have a lot of glass and, maybe they just, add, lead to them to make them seem heavier. I'm not sure why they're so heavy, because a lot of Canon equivalent lenses are actually lighter. So it must just be they have a lot of heavy glass in there, and they're all metal. But yeah, it's just basically like you really notice it when you have that combo on your GH4 or 5.
Yeah.
You really notice that lens. The lens is like most of the camera, most of the setup.
Oh yeah.
Whereas if you have, it's kind of like when you're holding the camera, you don't even notice the body really when you have that lens. It's like there, but it's more just like a handle. Whereas with these lenses, they're so lightweight and small that it's kind of like more of a unit, or more the camera's in charge. The camera is the center of everything.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Exactly.
and that's just the way it is, and that's kind of how Micro Four Thirds was intended to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think all this adaptation and all that stuff was an afterthought, and a really amazing afterthought for people like us that have a lot of larger glass and want to adapt it. But anyway, so that's my little spiel, and
That's great.
yeah, and then I guess along with that, kind of in the other vein, the opposite vein, I got a 0.64 metabones. So
Oh.
yeah.
Now wait a minute. Hang on. What 0.64 metabones?
Yes, that's
There's so many new models out there. What is this?
well, it's based. So the standard metabones is 0.71. So it means that it's going to it's going to squeeze down 0.71. So it's going to have whatever lens is on there, and it's going to squeeze it down to 0.71 of whatever the lens is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, so basically, the lower the number, the more it's squeezing, and therefore the wider view you get, and the more speed boosting you'll get.
Right.
So, like if you had a 0.5, it would squeeze it down to half, and you would get a lot more light.
So the lower the number, the better it is.
Well, the wider it is, the potentially wider it is, the less cropped, less cropped.
Right.
Yeah. So, but the problem is when it's that extreme, then you may start getting vignetting. Okay?
Oh, okay, right.
Because the actual lens itself,
that edge to edge thing that we're talking about.
Yes, the edge to edge thing may come into play with some lenses. I think I put it onto a GH5 and the 18 to 35, and I noticed a slight darkening on the edges. It wasn't like it was cutting it off, but it was definitely vignetting. Like it was getting near to the edge. So, and then if you're shooting with a different, not the wide aspect ratio. So on the GH series, the sensor for shooting video is cropped on the top and bottom. So it's not using the top and bottom portion. So if you can imagine those outer corners, they're not being used. So the vignetting is a little bit less on those type of lenses, right? But if you're shooting just photos, like 4x3 photos, and using that, or if you're using the mode where you can shoot video and using an anamorphic adapter to make it wider, then you would notice more vignetting. So the fact that we're using this cropped video mode on those sensors is kind of relieves us of a little bit of the vignetting problem. So you'll notice it much more if you're shooting in 4x3 mode or shooting photos in 4x3 mode. So anyway, just a little technical point there.
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah. Oh, so this is the Metabones T Speed Booster XL. Is that right? Is that what it is?
Yeah, the T, I believe, is the newest model of the speed boosters. Or actually, it's just the higher quality new model. I think it's the 4th generation. I actually believe that there's a 5th generation now, which is I looked into. Mm-hmm. And you can do a little search for Metabones 5th generation to know what I'm talking about. But so basically, the 5th generation is meant for people that want to fiddle more with their Metabones adapters, and they want to have a more secure, tight connection between the metabones and the EF lens, or whatever full frame lens you're using. Because what can happen a little bit is all lenses and adapters are slightly off. They're not 100% perfect, and there can be a little bit of wiggling that goes on. Like, you probably notice this with your adapter. Do you notice any kind of wiggling, or is it just super tight and locked? Okay.
That's the one thing about the Viltrox adapter that was, people were pleasantly surprised with. That it was pretty stable and stuff like that, and tight really and stuff like that. No, but I know what you mean. It's like when you click it, because I've had some cheap ones before where you click them and I don't even, they're not even speed boosts, they're just plain old lens adapters, right? Where you click them in, and then there's just that little bit of clicking play that you can have and stuff like that.
Yes, and then some. Maybe yours or others, they're so tight that it seems like you're going to break it if you actually start engaging it. And I've actually had those as well. They're like overly tight with some lenses and things. So anyway,
you need a crowbar to get them off at the end of the day.
Yeah, you kind of feel like if I turn this anymore, I'm going to break something.
Right, yeah.
So what this I think 5th generation speed booster does is it has a locking. A turning tightening mechanism on the front part that goes to the EF lens, and so you put the EF lens in and it's just totally loose. Like if you wouldn't be able to turn and have it click in. So you put it in, it's totally loose, and then this ring thing engages and you turn it until it's as tight as you want it. And then that kind of, so it's basically completely loose, and then as you turn it, it gets tighter.
So you just get to adjust it manually the way that you want.
Yes.
The get that kind of fit that you're looking for and stuff like that.
For any little variances in lenses and stuff. So I kind of like that in a way, but I'm a little afraid of it because I've heard reports that it's really easy to just forget that it doesn't lock, and there's no turning involved. There's no turning from the lens point of view. So it's a little bit fiddly because you have to hold with your left hand, you have to hold the lens in while you begin to turn and lock it in. And in that moment, you can actually drop the lens if you forget, or just, it's more fiddly. It takes longer.
Yeah.
So I might just get one and evaluate and see if I like it or not, or I may just skip it because the old ones seem fine for me. I'm not too unhappy about those, but those it's similar. You ever heard of the PL mount?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it stands for professional locking, and that's actually that's like the cinematography lens mount. That's the mount that's always been used for high-end cinematography cameras. Like if you bought an ARRI, it would probably have a PL mount. Anything else would be you would probably get an adapter. If you get a Red, you might get a PL mount. You can get EF mounts and things too for all these cameras, but PL is like the professional one. So if you get a PL mount lens, most likely it's a super expensive cinema lens.
Okay.
So yeah, and so it's kind of in that same vein. It's a locking mechanism, and then some of the Canons and some other brands have EF locking mounts as well. So they have that same principle that this Metabones has, but it's just for different cameras. So anyway, that's, I guess, a little extra on locking mechanisms. And
actually, I'm not familiar with that myself, so that's actually very good to know. I know that was always a huge complaint with other content makers is the whole, the adapters being a little bit loose. There's, play in it and all this kind of stuff. And that's a very interesting new feature about this locking mechanism. So that is pretty interesting.
Yeah. So, and I
but
guess
it adds another $50. That's all I'm saying.
It does, and maybe extra trouble and frustration.
Yeah,
so
I mean, well, you know what? You're right. It adds a little more trouble, but probably not any more than balancing your camera on on another. What do we call that?
Gimbal?
You're right, exactly, the gimbal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's for sure.
It's all part of the creative process, ladies and gentlemen. That's what
it is.
That's what we like to call it.
It's part of the fun stuff.
Yeah.
So and so you might, so not only did I get these GH5s and things in the last well, I got the original GH5 quite a long time ago, but I got the GH5S fairly recently. But there's another Micro Four Thirds camera that is about to arrive, and it's a camera that we've talked about before.
Yes. And
I actually, it's if you order from the big guys, it's back ordered to like next year.
Oh, it is really?
Yes. Some people that first ordered it and like pre-ordered it in April are just getting theirs now, and this is like mid-November. So, but through my contacts, in fact, I have this one company that I really love called Texas Media Systems,
mm-hmm.
and the president is Terry Nixon, and because he's the owner and president, and I've bought lots of kind of like brand new stuff from him over the years, and so we have kind of a relationship. And so I just a while back, like a month ago, said, hey, and I didn't really expect an answer of we got him, but I asked him, hey, I really want a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have one?
Mm-hmm. And
he says, and I emailed him, and then like the next day he said, I can set one aside for you. Where they actually came in today. So
wow.
Yeah. So
and these are legit production.
They're
things. They're not testers or anything, or protos or anything like that.
No, these are coming direct from the official factory.
Nice.
And so a lot of the smaller dealers actually are getting dribs and drabs of them. The big dealers like B&H, Adorama, and those that sell tons of stuff, they're actually getting them. But the problem is that everybody orders from them.
Right.
So the wait time is way longer.
Sure.
So, yeah. So, so he actually said, I'll set it aside for you, and it's coming in, or it came in, it's going to come in tomorrow afternoon. I'll set one aside for you and put you at the top of the list, and et cetera. So that was really nice. So, so he shipped it out. I got it in about a week, and we're going to be talking about it.
So you have it in your hot little hands right now. You've maybe by the time this episode is finished, you might have given it a test drive for you to discuss some, at least some initial thoughts of the thing.
Yes. Well, actually, I think by the last segment of this episode, by the outro, I'll be able to give you a full report on it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Good.
Yeah.
Good. So that's the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. That's just been newly released from Blackmagic. What do they call themselves? Blackmagic Designs. And so let's stay tuned for all that excitement. But let's do this. Great info on the lenses. I've already copied down your list, and I will be breaking into your house to steal those lenses from you to use on my GH4 within a couple of weeks. And but that's good to know. Let's do this, Keith. Let's continue more with our introduction here into this podcast, and then get into more of the meat and potatoes of these things. And maybe we will be lucky enough to hear more about the Blackmagic Designs 4K by the end of this episode. What do you say? Let's take a quick break. Yeah. Let's reset our hard drives before they crash and burn, and we will come right back, okay?
Okay.
All right, you're listening to Tech Move. We'll be right back. We're right back here with Tech Move, and again, thank you very much for joining us on this new episode. It is Rod Louie and Keith Moreau, and Keith was just about to go into his new bag of tricks that he's got. And Keith, what's new in the old shopping cart of Keith Moreau right now?
So I just want to talk about a few of the new pieces of gear that I got recently.
Excellent.
And have tried out. So a couple of them I just have on order, and then a couple of them I actually received and tried out. So one of the things I got recently was the GoPro Hero 7. So
now this is the Hero 7. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Oh.
that's the brand new Hero 7. It looks a lot like the Hero 5 and 6.
I'm surprised that they even were able to put out a 7 because of all the financial trouble GoPro was in.
Are they going out of business? Or
Well,
are they okay?
they had a lot of financial problems that I didn't even know they were going to be able to. I didn't think they were going to be able to produce anything after the Black.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, well, excellent. Maybe they reconstructed themselves, and maybe they were hoping to hit it big with this Hero 7. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I just saw a few reviews on it, and I kind of needed a new GoPro because I've been doing some stuff with my old GoPro 4s, which are, I guess, kind of ancient now.
Yeah.
And I was doing some interesting time lapses with the GoPro 4s because it was kind of a situation where I didn't want to put a super high-end camera in this location, but I wanted to get an okay time lapse. And that actually, it's pretty good for time lapse.
Yeah, I think they're really great for it.
Yeah. I had some issues with one of the cameras, and I don't know why. But the other one worked really well, and it recorded like for 6 straight days and another like 3 days in another time lapse. So it got really good. Yeah. Got a lot of stuff. And it also is pretty good in low light, because I think what happens is it actually automatically lengthens the exposure when the light starts getting kind of low. So maybe that's, bad if you have moving stuff.
Right.
But for time lapse, I mean, maybe it's okay to have streakiness sometimes.
Yeah.
So because I was actually pretty pleased with how low noise the image was, even in the night scenes, because we're doing like 24 hours things.
Sure.
So anyway, that was the GoPro 4, and then I just kind of got intrigued by GoPro again. Like I'd been kind of like not interested in newer GoPros. It just seemed like a gimmick. It seemed like they just kept redressing the old GoPros. Like there wasn't anything new.
Right. With maybe a couple new little features that really didn't warrant the price tag or whatever.
Yeah, but then I started looking at some of the reviews for the brand new GoPro 7, and it seemed like a lot of the people were saying, like, this is the GoPro they should have made a couple of years ago. And there's a couple of really good features in it. Like the sound is a lot better, and like for some reason the mic or whatever they have on it is much better than before. So that's kind of cool, because the sound was never that great.
But in all honesty, were you ever using a GoPro for sound? I mean, you were really just capturing action shots, fast moving, underwater, blah, 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 this and that.
Yeah.
I mean, did anyone really care about sound capture for a GoPro? I mean, obviously they do. If I guess it's nice to have.
It's nice to have, and then for example, if you're doing an action cam and you're doing a selfie or something like that, or you're doing like a vlog, and you're using the GoPro because it's appropriate, because it's in a situation where it might get water damage or whatever, water on it, then you don't really have another sound option. You have to use the GoPro's sound, I think.
True.
Right? Unless you have another really weird, underwater microphone thing, which you'll never have. So yeah, so you have to. And so in that situation, I've heard the sound, and it's really good. It's really good in, water sports and things like that. So yeah, and you might use it as like an all-purpose vlogging system, rather than having this huge, GH5 or something at the end of your arm and getting heavy and whatever.
Right.
You could just have this GoPro 7. It's super light. You can just put it in your pocket or whatever, and then whip it out. It's even easier than an iPhone. But the thing that kind of really sold me was the stabilization on it. So there's this new.
I have to admit to you, I'm on the website right now, and they were just showing this gimbal-like stabilization without the gimbal.
Yeah.
And it looks fabulous.
Yes. It is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And it's not really jello-y, which not quite sure how they did that, because I know that it's using a rolling shutter because what happens a lot of time is with newer, almost all new cameras, they use these CMOS sensors, and it's a kind of it's not taking one frame at a time like the old CCDs. It's actually kind of doing this line skipping thing, not line skipping, but line scanning.
Okay.
So it's like there's a pixel that's scanned at the very top left, and then it goes all the way across, and then it zags, and it does like these lines. What causes this jello effect is the fact that that pixel that's in the top left is way sooner than the pixel at the bottom right, and that's what causes the waviness. So as it's scanning, a vertical like bar or something will have one position at one point in time, and another position another point in time, even though it's a straight bar up and down. So it'll look like it's curved. And so if you're on a vibrating surface and you use this form of stabilization, you'll have basically jello baked into the image. So I don't know how they got around the jello. I don't know if there's some computing power that counteracts the jello, like reverses it inside the system with the processors. But however they do it, I'll probably look it up and we can talk about that in another episode. It's really amazing. It's like a gimbal.
Yeah.
But it's all it's all electronic though. It's not a physical gimbal.
And it doesn't do anything to affect the image or anything like that. It looks pretty good from what I've seen. Yeah,
it looks as good or better than previous GoPros.
Yeah.
So it's not, the GoPro isn't the ultimate in quality. It's
Right.
nowhere near a GH5 or 4 or
Right.
any other big camera, but it's not bad.
For pocket-sized little Altoid box type of thing. It looks pretty darn good, pretty powerful.
Pretty darn good. You can do 4K and has a lot of versatility.
Yeah.
So and then this version, they don't have a case anymore. Like you don't need a case; it's totally waterproof. So
that's nice.
Yeah, they have and I kind of feel like maybe the unit's not very well protected, but they do have things you could put around it if you want to. They also have a way of changing the lens out. Like if the lens gets messed up or scratched, you can kind of undo it and put a new one on.
Oh, nice.
And it's not very expensive. It's like $25 or something.
That's good.
Yeah. So anyway, I got that, and I haven't used it a ton, but I did test it a bit, and I liked it. I actually liked it.
And what kind of video does it output? I mean, file? Is it a MOV? Is it what is it?
It's the standard H.264, or it's I believe it's the H.265. I think. So a little bit harder for some systems.
I am noticing that there are 3 types of Hero 7s. There's a black version, silver, and a white. And it looks like without question the one that you want to get is the black.
Yes,
that has
that's
everything.
The one I got.
That has everything on it that Keith just spoke about. Whereas the silver and the white do not have that hyper smooth video feature, which I think is essential if you want to, get one of these. That's really what you got to go with.
It's really the main reason for getting it.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. So there's that. I also received and have flown the Mavic 2 Pro.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, the DJI Mavic 2. So haven't totally studied the images, although I've seen a lot of images on the internet, but just flying it is awesome. It's really quiet. That was the thing that really surprised me. It's super quiet. Like, how there's that super loud droning sound?
Yeah.
This one is, once it's 30 feet away, you can't even hear it.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
It's kind of amazing.
Right.
I was so if you want to do any, spying on people, without them knowing.
You could do it pretty easily, huh?
Yeah, very easily for all the people that want to do that. So, no, but I just thought it flew really smooth. It seemed really super solid, and it's teeny. It's not as teeny as the Air, but it and the controller and batteries fit into a smallish case that's probably like 6 inches wide by about 4 inches deep by about 8 inches high. So you can carry the whole system in this little bag.
How is it in comparison to the original Mavic?
I think it's maybe slightly bigger, but imperceptibly, not much.
And what about the flying difference? Like you said, just easier to fly, noise factor lower.
Noise factor, I believe, is a little bit lower. I don't actually have the original Mavic. I have the Mavic Air.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I didn't get the Mavic because I figured the Mavic Air was about the same quality and much smaller. Yeah. So I just didn't get it. Or actually, I got one and returned it right away when the Mavic Air came out. I didn't even open the box, but I think it's a little bit quieter. I think one of the things about the Mavic Platinum was that it was pretty quiet. So this one I think has that or even better noise levels. But I think it has a lot more safety features, more sensors, and not sure other comparisons, but the cameras are a lot better. The camera on it's way better.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So it's the one with the super high-end camera. What is it? Hasselblad camera?
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And the camera's gigantic. I mean, it's really big compared to the... Like, usually cameras on drones are really teeny.
Yeah.
But this one is a pretty substantial size. So if you look at images of it, it's right there. So yeah, so I'm happy with that guy. I recommend it. I'll have to get back to you with footage and stuff, but I'm really happy with it.
Great.
It's a nice little unit.
Cool.
And then another thing I got recently, and I was actually kind of lucky to get it, I think, was the Aputure 120D2.
Aputure 120D2.
Yeah. We talked about it, I think, in the last episode with Amsterdam, when we went to Amsterdam and talked to Aputure.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think we talked too much about it. We just kind of touched on it. We may have touched on it in the previous episode of the Cinegear. But anyway, the thing about Aputure stuff, they're so in demand that they don't have a super, like their delivery times on products that just came out is kind of long.
Oh, the D2 is that light. Is that correct?
Yes, it's the light that's like has the Bowens mount on it and it's really bright.
It's and it's relatively compact for what it does, but it's like the light output of the sun or something like that. It's really super bright.
It's pretty bright. I have the 300, which is like twice as bright, but also bigger.
Yep.
And so this one I tested and used it a little bit, and I like it. It still puts out a lot of light. Probably not as much as the 300, obviously, but much smaller, more compact. It's got a few more maybe bells and whistles and as far as controls and stuff. But what I like about it too is it doesn't have this extra brick for the power. So there's one big brick for the power, and that's it. Okay. Whereas with the previous and like the previous 120 and the 300, it's got two bricks. It's got a brick that you plug into the wall.
That's a lot.
Like a big brick, like we're talking huge units, and then like a foot long, and then another foot long unit between that unit and the light. So it's two things to set up. So this is cool because it's got everything on one brick, and the brick also has a battery adapter on it. So you can put a V-mount battery on it and power it, and I tried that too, and that worked pretty well.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So I like that
they thought about that stuff. That's good.
Yeah, so I like it. Have to use it on an actual shoot, but I'm sure it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
So I actually like it. I'm thinking maybe I'll get one more because it's a little bit smaller and a little more convenient. I don't always need that 300, so I'm not sure if I'll get another. It's not that expensive. It's like $750 or so.
Does it run very hot? Do these lights run extremely hot?
No, the actual light itself is an LED, so that part doesn't get too hot. It has a little fan in it, but it's pretty quiet. Yeah. So, but the thing that's cool about it sets up really quick.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah. So if you have time
put it on a tripod, throw it up there, flip it on, and do your adjustments, and that's about it, right? Pretty
much, yeah. Or a light stand with a 5-inch stud. Yep. It's got that receptacle on it. So, yeah, it's pretty quick. I think you could probably set it up in about a minute.
Oh, that's awesome.
From beginning,
that's
beginning
awesome.
to end. Yeah, whereas sometimes setting up those flexible LED lights I have is a little more time consuming.
Oh yeah, well, because you have to string them up right, and you have to put the clips on and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
For these Aputures, do you use them with any type of domes or anything like that to diffuse, or can it do or do you reflect it off anything, or what do you do?
Well, it's got a Bowens mount, which is kind of an industry standard socket thing that's on the front, and it's about a 6-inch diameter socket, and you can put a number of light modifiers in front. I actually use a Westcott quick, forget what it's called, but it's the one that's basically like a really quick snap open umbrella, and then it's done. It's really quick.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's why I used that one. And then I think Aputure has their own version of it, although it's not quite as quick as this Westcott. So that's why I used the Westcott one. I already have them. But they came up with a new version of their soft dome that's a bit quicker to set up as well. So yeah, and it's probably a bit cheaper. I think the Westcott's were like $300.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and I think probably Aputures are way less.
Cool.
So yeah, but you can do anything. Also, Aputure sells a Fresnel type light, which is a way to have kind of a tight or wide beam. So yeah, so there's a lot of versatility with this light. I really like it. It's pretty good, and the fit and finish on this particular unit was really, really good too. I was impressed with that. It's a professional light.
It's a really nice looking light. So
yeah,
I like it too. Yep.
Cool.
Excellent.
Yeah. So I think we ran out of time to talk about stuff. Maybe by the time we talk again, I'll have received a couple of the other things on this list here.
Well, let's we'll take that up on our maybe our next recording. And but I think those are exciting developments, especially you caught my my eye with that GoPro Hero 7 thing. I think I might want to investigate that because I have kind of been in the market for a action cam, and that sounds to be something that would just be awesome to have.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be really great for vacations and such. So
just bring a lot of batteries.
Is that right? Is that one of those types of things?
Yeah, it is.
What does it run off of? What does it run off of?
They're little teeny GoPro batteries specifically made for the 5 through 7. But they're, I don't know if you're familiar with the sizes,
no,
but they're
not.
really small.
No.
Yeah, they're really teeny.
Okay.
And they don't last long. I'd say 30 minutes.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Yeah.
So you got buy your 10-pack whenever you go anywhere.
And remember to bring them.
I'll try and remember that, and you'll understand that later on in the episode, folks. So that'll be good. All right, Keith, thank you very much. Let's take a time out, and we will come back with more of Tech Move. Welcome back to Tech Move. Rod Louie and Keith Moreau. And Keith, I wanted to share with you and the entire Tech Move universe that Rod Louie had a mishap, as he often has. Rookie mistake here, Keith. I had a birthday party to attend, and it was my desire. It was not an assignment or anything like that. This was just my own personal thing that I was going to. I wanted to take some stills and video and kind of make a, maybe a nice little package as a birthday, a post-birthday present.
That's really nice.
Rookie mistake. I forgot batteries for the camera.
Oh.
So
that's unfortunate.
No, it was terrible. So of course I didn't take a thing. I essentially, I didn't even take the camera bag into the venue. I just left it in the trunk of the car and said, "Oh crap! I didn't have any batteries." You can't run to CVS or the grocery store and buy batteries for the GH4 or any of these things. Just out of luck, right? Just out of luck.
Yeah.
And the terrible thing is, you come up with the big question. How in the world do you remember all the stuff that you need to bring for a shoot? Unless you have a checklist, which maybe, when you're doing a paid gig or something like that, maybe you do have something like that. But how about when you just want to say, you know what, I'm going on a little outing with some friends. Let me take a camera with me other than my iPhone. What do I need to bring?
Yes.
Have you run into this problem, Keith?
I have. I've left for even paying gigs and forgotten important things.
Yeah.
I think so. The farther and less convenient it is to go back to get the stuff you forgot.
Yes.
The more careful I need to be.
Yeah, that's true.
And the less. So I mean, I've done some gigs like really close to my home, and I probably forgot more stuff in those situations than other situations because I don't care as much because I know I can go back.
Yeah.
But you mentioned checklist. I actually do, for important stuff, I do have a checklist.
Yeah, that's smart, which I think is great.
Yeah, and I kind of reuse it. I will for particularly like an important gig or trip or something, I will make a specific checklist. I'll copy and paste it from things, like I'll put the camera down and then I'll think about all the things that go with the camera, like batteries, cards, memory cards,
Yeah.
any other things. And I kind of put that in the camera bag, and then I have like an audio section. What audio do I need? And then I list all those things out, cables and things that you might forget, adapters, maybe if you have to plug into some PA and it has some weird connectors. And then lighting, kind of have a section for lighting, camera support gear like tripods or sliders or things like that in another section. And then, so I have like 4 or 5 kind of sections that are separated, and then I'll kind of keep looking at it and then add to it as I think of things. And then as I load stuff in the vehicle or load it in an area that I'm going to take to the vehicle or wherever I'm going, I will check it off. So that's
like a shopping list. I mean, it's just a grocery shopping list, just of tech stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes I'll even forget to put stuff on the checklist.
Yeah.
So, but usually if you're just kind of sitting down quietly for a few minutes, you can kind of get a pretty complete list. And I would think with your set of gear, it's not like an unlimited amount of stuff.
No, it's very small, which is really disappointing, right? Because because with the small amount of stuff, and admittedly, I was just bringing a couple of lenses, the body, a flash, and you know what? I remembered to put the batteries in the flash. I just didn't remember to put the battery in the camera.
Yeah.
Which I and the reason why. See, here's the problem too. I have 3 batteries for the GH4. Okay.
Yes.
The original one, and then I bought a set of 2. As backups and stuff like that. The problem is that the smart thing would be to leave it in the camera bag, like I leave everything else. Everything is there, right?
Yes. Yes.
But it needs to get charged, so I leave it in a different area of my office. I don't leave it in the bag because I say, it's always going to be here in the office. Well, you know what? It was always there. I just never bring it.
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You just don't think, because I'm so busy concentrating on, I got to get batteries in the flash. I got to make sure the SD card is ready, whatever I'm going to use, right?
Yeah.
Make sure I have this mount for the tripod. Make sure I bring this lens. Do I have the right adapter? La 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 la. And you know what? The battery. That's all part of the camera. Yeah, I think that's what it is in the back of my head. The battery's all part of the camera. But
so
nope.
What? Yeah. So here's another thing that helps me sometimes. If you like, what I do a lot of times is I'll load a card into the camera. So I'll take one of my cards that I've reused, SD cards, and I'll put it into the camera, and then I'll format it so that it's ready to go, so I don't have to mess with it when I get to the location.
Okay.
At least I have one card that's formatted. I don't do that with all of them, just the first one, right? So I can just get up and go.
Right.
And so when you do that, you have to have a battery, right?
Sure. Correct.
So, and you have to, and then you're maybe aware of issues with it.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah. So at least you have the battery and you have the card. And then that also kind of reminds you, I need cards if I need to shoot a long time, and I need more batteries. So then that kind of reminds you to load those batteries up into your kit.
Yeah. That's a great idea. I should get into the habit of reformatting the cards. The problem is that I have big cards, and I just say, I hardly took anything the last time. Why go through the trouble of reformatting right now? You know what I mean? So so I just leave it the way it is, and I'll separate it out by shoot date and all this kind of stuff. So, but I used to do that. I used to reformat cards for every new job that I was going to do.
Yeah.
And that's probably the smarter way to handle it.
Yeah, and it's also a little mini test of the system.
Correct.
It's a way for you to verify that the camera is actually functioning. So it'll probably be functioning when you get there.
Right.
And I've actually had that happen. The camera's died or something's broken, maybe it needs a little cleaning, like the contacts or something. Something's just not right. So it's just like a little pre-check.
Yeah.
Sometimes with really important gigs where I'm just super paranoid, and I've done this a few times, I pretty much set up, and we're talking about like lots of equipment stuff, but not like 5 things. It's more like 100 things.
Right.
I pretty much set up everything. Like I set up the whole studio that I'm going to reproduce, on location at the client's location. I'll just do it here.
You mean you'll almost do like a test run type of
Yes.
thing of what you're going to need?
Yes. I'm gonna
that's
do a
very
test.
interesting.
Yeah, and so I actually have all the cables and everything. Everything's all connected. All the equipment that I need is actually functioning and working. And I've discovered, this doesn't work, or I need to use a different cable for this because this cable's broken, or maybe it's different levels in the preamps or whatever. It can get really complicated, and your memory's only so good and your checklists are only so good. Really, the best thing is just set up use the setup at your home before you leave.
Right.
And then you're assured that you have some working system, and then have a backup too.
Those are great suggestions. I mean, what could have saved me? Even just take one single photo.
Yes.
As a pre-test. Hey, load up the card, take the photo, make sure. In some ways, you should just say, hey, does the camera work? That could have saved my bacon right there.
Yeah, and it literally takes maybe 30 seconds or less. So.
Too long because the power on of the GH4 just takes forever. So that's actually not true. It's very, very quick. I'm just completely impatient. Well, hey, those are great suggestions. I hate myself for missing it, but then again, I didn't have to take myself away from the buffet table, and I got to enjoy engorging myself with unhealthy food instead of taking pictures. So all was not lost.
That's good. You actually got to enjoy the event instead of being a weird spectator. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Keith, thank you so much for some of those suggestions. Let's take another break, and we will come back with even more important items to discuss as we continue on with Tech Move. Welcome back to Tech Move. Rod Louie, Keith Moreau here, and I've got another question to throw it at Keith Moreau. It's not really a question, but what I'd like to do is revisit, Keith, something we talked about in an episode way, way, way back, long time ago.
Yes.
And I think it's time for a revisit. And I'd like to revisit the area of cloud backup. This is something, Keith, that I have resisted to do because, as our listening audience knows, if it costs more than 10 cents, I do not want to spend any money on it because I am the ultimate cheapskate, and I plan to keep it that way. Mm-hmm. But it has also come to my attention that I am running... I am essentially playing Russian roulette right now because I keep everything on this network attached storage Synology thing. The whole life is here. Plus, it's also like in various, I don't know, shall we say like Yahoo / Google accounts somewhere here and there, blah, 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 this and that. Sometimes I've even resorted to the fact of sending smaller files as attachments to my email, knowing that they'll be backed up there.
Yes.
Now, that is not a great way to do things, folks. I will tell you right now, because I think they have a retention period. I don't think it lasts forever. It's not a great way. So, like, if you want to do it for, like, the very short interim, okay, maybe that's okay. But as far as, like, lifelong type of things, like from back in, 2006 or whatever it is, forget it. You're not going to get anything there.
Okay.
So, Keith, I want to use cloud backup for that very thing.
Yes.
I do love my Synology. I do love my network attached storage. It's got a lot of storage. I keep a lot of video files there. A lot of my projects are there. That's
Yes.
all terrific, right? But let's talk practical stuff too. How about like maybe tax forms that I've had over the last few years, right? That I'd like to keep, or old mementos that I've digitally encoded, photographs, home movies, whatever. And I don't really want to. I mean, I'll always keep it on the NAS, but I'd also like to have a nice backup somewhere else where I can be relatively assured that it will be there. I think cloud backups might be my answer, and I want it to be very easy to access.
Yes.
Now, Keith, I think in our last, however 100 years ago when we visited cloud backup, you were using a product called Backblaze.
Yes, and I still am.
And you still are. Let's kind of delve into that if we can.
Sure.
I'd like to know. Like I said, we delved into this about 100 years ago. 100 years past now. Are you still happy with Backblaze? And give me a reason why.
Overall, I'm happy with it. There's a couple of quirks that with it. Mostly, I think because my backup was so large to it, and I guess over time maybe their system changed slightly. Little things in the architecture changed, and their database became unmanageable even for its own self. And so there was a really big hurdle, I guess, problem that I faced when I switched over from my trusty old Mac Pro cheese grater to the iMac Pro this year.
Oh,
earlier this year.
Yeah. Which wasn't that long ago, frankly.
No, it was early, like I think it was like January, February when I got it kind of switched all over. And so what happened was, normally when you switch computers, there's a method in Backblaze to transfer the backup, the source of the backup from an old computer to a new computer. It's called inherit backup state. And you just go into Backblaze, you use the same username and log in when you log into this system, the Backblaze system, and then there's a choice to inherit backup state, and then it gives you a list of what other computers you have on your account, and then you choose that computer. It's kind of a label, like, for example, mine was called Mac Pro, like 2012 or something, because that's when I got it.
Sure.
That's when I started that particular backup. So that backup was like 8 years old. Or something like that.
And is that one huge backup? Is it like gigabytes or?
Yeah, it was like 60 or 70 terabytes.
Oh wow! Okay, huge.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, because it can build up a lot in that time. And that's it's mostly video stuff.
Sure.
And it's not like every video file I have, because some of them are too big to even back up. But it's a lot of them. It's almost all of them. So but and also there's just a lot of little files that are backed up that I think increase the database size just as much as a big file. So Backblaze has this file that it writes to keep track of what it's backed up and what it hasn't. And, it's just I don't exactly know what the format is of the database. I assume it's something like SQL, but who knows. Anyway, so it writes to this file and changes it all the time, and whenever it's backing up, it updates the file. So I guess the file either got corrupted or it got into a state where it couldn't be inherited to this new computer. It worked fine on the old computer, so whatever state it was on that one, but it just couldn't be transferred to the new computer. It just kept failing. And one thing that's not great about Backblaze is they're kind of unhelpful when things like this happen.
As far as support goes, you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, they don't just like ignore you. They will respond, but their response is mostly like, sorry.
Yeah.
In this case,
there are too many variables. They don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, and the fact is that it's such a cheap service that if they did give you a lot of support, like somebody like me, who they're losing money on,
right?
With, 70 terabytes,
right?
They're probably encouraged to not be that helpful. like there's probably business meetings where they look at the chart and say, look at all these people that are taking advantage of us. Get rid of these people, whatever you can do.
Right.
Right. And then they say, and these are the people we want, the people with 1 megabyte of storage space on our system. These are the people we want. Get more of these people.
Right.
Be very helpful to these people. So anyway, yeah. So they I'm not sure they do that. I'm just kidding.
Right.
Backblaze folks.
Right.
But I can understand.
Don't cut off Keith's account, please. He needs his files.
Yeah, but if it was my business, I would, I probably wouldn't, say discourage those people, but I wouldn't be super helpful either because, yeah, you're going to go out of your way to keep, 20 discs in their system that are probably worth like thousands of dollars and only get like $50 to $60 a year. Mm-hmm. Never pay those off.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
So, anyway, so if you do have an issue like that, they're not too helpful and you just have to you're on your own. I had this issue in the past when I switched from like an older Mac Pro to a newer Mac Pro, kind of the same issue. But I was able to kind of recover from that and get the new Mac Pro using this old Mac Pro's backup. But this time it just didn't work. And so I just said, okay, I'm going to have to bite the bullet and just start re-uploading all my files again. So
let me interrupt you here.
Yes.
Before we get too much further into this.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So you are trying to get this 2016, you said 2016 backup?
It's actually 2000. I said 2012, but I think it's 2013.
Okay, so you're trying to get this 2013 backup onto your brand new iMac of 2018.
It's kind of the database. It's like so that the iMac will be able to back up those same drives and have access to those same drives.
Oh, okay, got it. So the new iMac, or really just a new computer, period.
Any new computer, yes.
will be able to find the Backblaze backup on the Backblaze servers or whatever it is.
Yes, and then if you have those same drives attached that were attached to your old computer to your new computer, it'll just act like they're the same drives.
Like nothing's happened. And
nothing's
stuff like
happened.
That.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And yes. And so if you had a small backup, that would be really easy, uncomplicated, not too many files. It probably works really well. But with mine, I have so many files and it's so old. There's probably just a lot of cruft and it couldn't deal with it.
And what do you think would be considered small to make it easy? Like you're talking, you have 60 terabytes. You said 60 terabytes.
Yeah, 60 to 70.
Yeah, 60 to 70 terabytes. What do you think is a quote unquote manageable level?
Oh, I'd say. I'd say it's even manageable up to 70, 80, as long as you have a fresh backup.
Okay.
But when you have this huge backup that's gone through a couple computers and lots of years, and maybe different architectures as Backblaze has evolved and gotten better, whatever, maybe they stop supporting, old files that are really old and.
So what could you have done differently during that span of time? Should you have backed up using? Well, when are you going to know they're using different architecture? But should you have migrated some of those old backups to something new, or you just really can't? You just got to roll dice and just hope for the best.
I think in this case you just have to roll the dice because they don't really open their architecture to you. They don't tell you what they're doing. They
just really update and stuff like that, and here you go. Yeah,
and they have little help web pages to tell you what to do when this happens, and they have good procedures and this and that. But sometimes it's just you're just overtaxing the system. So anyway, what happened was I just said, okay, well I'm going to keep this Mac Pro backup alive, and so every 30 days, if you don't have the original computer connected that have backed up all these drives, it will actually forget them. So if I backed up a drive and 35 days had passed since I connected that computer or that drive up, it would actually just delete it from the Backblaze system, and you can never retrieve it again.
Oh, that's not great, is it?
No, it's not. Well, it's okay if you're connected and remember to connect your hard drives to the computer once in a while. And so basically at the end of every month now, I've been connecting my old Mac Pro and replugging in my hard drives that I have backed up on to that Mac Pro.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have this one file that I just changed the date in it. So it's just kind of a new file. It's been modified. And that works really well. At first it wasn't working too well. Like I'd plug it in and it would take a really long time to recognize that these drives are now plugged in. It would take like days.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, maybe if I just put something new on the drive, it'll detect it faster. And it actually worked. So before I do all this, I modify this file. I plug in my old Mac Pro, log in, start doing the sync, and then in about a day, probably less than a day, it recognizes that all those drives have been connected, all those old drives to this old computer backup, and everything's great.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been doing that ever since I migrated over to the iMac. So at least I had a backup of all these old drives, and then once it's synced up, and my old Mac Pro has another 30 days of life with these drives, and then I replug all these drives back into my new iMac and continue to upload these drives. So I'm actually almost done. I've got 6 huge drives. That's what the 70 to 90 terabytes are, and I've only got I have 2 drives left, and I'm down to, I'm just looking at it right now. The one drive the second to the last drive that I have to back up, I only have 1.7 terabytes left.
Oh wow! Which is not a lot for you.
No. And then so once that's done, then I'm going to have that one finished, and I'm going to start backing up the very final drive.
Mm-hmm.
And once that final drive is backed up, which I think will take about a month, really,
yeah,
maybe 3 weeks.
Sure.
Then I'm just going to kill that old Mac Pro backup. I'm just not going to connect it anymore.
Oh.
And then I'm going to have the full set of backups on my new iMac.
Right.
And I won't have to do this tedious thing of unplugging and plugging.
Right.
And back.
But it has taken a while to do all that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've been backing up since like February. So what is it now? It's November. So like 6 months. 7 months. Yeah.
Yep.
8 months.
Yep.
8 months. Yeah.
Yep.
I forgot how to add and subtract.
Oh, that's all right.
Like,
no,
yeah.
You know what? It's close enough.
Maybe it's 9 months.
Close enough. I also want to explore the actual usefulness of these cloud backup services.
Yes.
As I mentioned in my introduction, I want to know what I know what the experience is when you're sitting in front of your desktop and you're having this backed up, you're having that, that's all great.
Yes.
But what I'm hoping that something like this does is not. It's almost unfair to say backup, because what I want cloud availability.
So you want to be able to get files from somewhere else remotely,
right? And I want to be able to get it from this one cloud backup thing, if possible. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case or not.
Yeah, you'll be able to, as long as it's fully backed up, which might take a while depending on your upload speeds, because that's really the kicker. It takes a long time to upload data.
Oh yeah, especially on my crappy DSL thing. It'll probably take months to get it up there.
Yeah, because I have a really super fast upload speeds.
What are your upload speeds?
I don't know. I think it's
Megs?
like 5 megabytes a second or something.
Wow,
it's pretty fast.
That's really fast.
Yeah,
that's what I get
fast.
down, for crying out loud. So
yeah, well, I have like a gigabyte download.
Yeah.
So usually with internet services, the upload speed's a lot slower than the download speed.
Exactly.
Yeah. So and even with my super fast download speed, it's still taking quite a long time to back this stuff up.
Sure.
But so experience-wise, yeah, you can go remotely and you can download those files to your local computer wherever you are.
Mm-hmm.
You can even download directories or whatever you want. It usually comes in a zip file.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a pretty large file too. I think I've zipped up like up to a terabyte before.
Oh wow.
Kind of crazy, yeah.
Okay.
So,
but can you see it in the cloud? In other words, you could.
What you do is you click on your backup, and then because maybe people have different computers in their SIM account. So, but just saying you just have one, you'll click on your one computer that you have backed up, and then you'll see all the drives that it is associated with that computer.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's kind of like a directory tree. You'll see a bunch of drives on the left. For example, Rodney Drive 1, Rodney Drive 2,
Right.
for example. You click on those, and then it expands out on the left side all the folders that are in that drive. And then you click on the left on the folder. It's kind of like the Finder. You click on the left, and then it expands to the right what is inside it, either files or folders. More files or folders on the right. And then you can click on what you want to restore. And then you can either download the restore, or you can have it loaded onto a hard drive and they can send it to you. And I actually used that service before.
Yeah, I've read about that where where if it's too big or whatever it is, they'll just send you a physical hard drive, or vice versa. If you want to back up something that's too huge, and like maybe in my case, that might be the way to go.
Yeah, I don't know if they have the service where you can load up a hard drive and send it to them. I don't think there's 2 different services with Backblaze, and as far as I know, the one that you're talking about where you can upload a drive is the more expensive version.
Okay.
It's like double the price, or it's by megabyte or gigabyte or something.
Right.
So I'm not sure if that's what you'd want to go for. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't, because I don't even want to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But they have these tiny little 4 terabyte drives they use, and they will send those to you, and they'll charge you like $200 each for them. But then if you return them, they'll refund it to you. So it's actually really cool.
Oh, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, and I don't even think you have to pay postage either.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's actually, I was really surprised how awesome it was that they can do that, because that saves you a lot of downloading time and reliability. Because sometimes downloading these really huge things over the internet doesn't work that well.
Right. Exactly.
So and then it's only like $5 or $6 a month. So it's crazily cheap, to get this backup. I mean, it's cheaper to just use their backup service than to buy a hard drive and then like copy stuff onto it and then take it to your friend's house.
Yeah.
Or send it to your friend's house, which is another way to do kind of a pseudo cloud backup.
Mm-hmm.
There are technical ways to do that if you have a friend that lives somewhere, like far enough away where their data wouldn't get destroyed when yours got destroyed. Like far enough from the asteroid hit,
right.
Like a few thousand miles away.
Right.
But
so let's review and summarize here. So
okay.
It looks like I can check off a couple of things. I could pretty much back up any file that I want, and it'll be available in the cloud whenever I want it, even just a single file. I should be able to see it just like a window finder.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So I don't have to have an entire drive zipped up and downloaded in order for me to get this. I should be able to see each and every individual file just as if it were my hard drive here at the house or what have you.
Correct.
And then, of course, for real backup situations, that's where you would have the bigger zipped up file and or hard drive shipped to you, of which then you can just upload it to your system and restore and all this kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. And how much is the service again?
I think it's like $5 or $6. Let me check.
Right.
I don't think it's very expensive. I mean, I think if you buy a whole year's worth, it's pretty darn cheap.
So do you use stuff like that in the capacity that I'm illustrating? Like, let's say you're out and about. Let's say you're at CES, and you are about to buy the Ursa Mini, and but you forget your bank account number, and you have it on a notepad text file on that you've backed up, and there's no way to get to your machine except for this backup. Would you be able to get that off of Backblaze while you're ready to give them a credit card?
Yeah, I could do that. It might be kind of slow to do it super quick like that, but yeah, I could do that.
But you could do it. I mean, like you could say, "Hey, I'll be back in like 2 minutes or something like that. Let me get you a card number that I've stolen from my.
Let me log into Rod's computer and I'll get his card numbers and give those to you.
The credit card printing machine that Rod has. Yes. Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, you could do that. So I don't necessarily do that, but theoretically, yes, you could. And you can do it. It's just like going to a remote system and looking at the hard drive on a remote system.
I think my thing is about availability.
Okay.
And how can I get to it without much of an issue? Can I get to it relatively within reason, relatively quickly? If I clone my hard drives here, and maybe not even all the video files, but really more important things like actual documents that we all have somewhere hidden away somewhere. Would that be available to me? And it sounds like it would be.
Yeah, it would be. I think it's kind of cool. It's like a little remote Dropbox of your hard drives.
Yeah. You know what? Excellent. Excellent. Because, I've used Dropbox before and it's just a little limited and I'm too cheap to get it expanded and stuff. But something like Backblaze might be because I think their storage capacities, I wouldn't need as much as you have. I probably would like to have the 4 terabyte type of thing going on.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Yeah.
That would be easy. So I looked at the pricing here, and for the personal backup service, which is what I have, it's $5 a month, $50 a year, or $95 for 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cheap.
Not bad at all.
Yeah. And it's unlimited.
That's unlimited, meaning unlimited as far as like I could put 60 terabytes if I wanted to.
Yes, you could abuse them and become a undesirable customer.
That's pretty good. Yeah. And now, since our last recording of Backblaze, we actually can confirm that they've been in business for a while now.
Oh yeah, they've been 10 or more years.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and I've been with them almost from the beginning, I think.
Yeah.
They have a business. So the one I was telling you about was the one where you can upload a Synology drive to them. They send you a drive.
Oh.
And let me just see how much their pricing is. This is actually.
There are a bunch of competitors out there, like Keith, we were going to talk about some things like the iCloud, the Apple's iCloud thing. I've also read some things for a company called iDrive that's promoted a lot on some radio tech shows that I listen to. Things like that, a bunch of cloud backup services are out there. But we just happen to have a person here in the Tech Move studios that actually uses some good stuff like Backblaze. So
yeah,
that's good.
I also use iCloud a little bit, and I was going to spring for the large version of iCloud, but right now I'm just using the free version. I haven't really
which is only $5. It's only $5. Was it? The storage is not huge on that though, right? For iCloud.
I think you can just buy more.
Right, you can buy, but the free stuff is very limited.
The free stuff is limited. It's just like enough for a small device.
Right.
But it actually has helped a couple times. I think one of the kids' iPhones needed to be restored, and luckily he had backed it up, or it was automatically backed up to the cloud, and he didn't have a lot of stuff on it. So we were able to just reconstruct his lost iPhone really easily.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So it's pretty useful for that. I was actually thinking of paying for it because it's not very expensive to pay for the full backup. And that's actually really cool because then you don't have to worry about connecting to iTunes and doing that stuff. It just kind of in the background uploads to iCloud.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's
I might recommend that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
So yeah. Right. So but I actually do like Backblaze. I think they're the best deal, and from what I can see, pretty darn reliable. They've saved my butt a couple times.
Great. Yeah. I will investigate and report next time if I've pulled the trigger on it or not.
Yeah.
I think with all this 4K footage that I'm taking, along with a lot of these raw files, I'm gonna have to start thinking about really moving into something like that. So
I think so, and I think once you have some disaster, which you've been really lucky you have.
I have been very fortunate.
Yeah,
very
whereas I've
fortunate.
had
multiple.
many.
Yeah, right.
I'm just you'll be glad that you have some good backup system.
Agreed. Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed. I like I said, I'm playing Russian roulette right now. It's just I don't know how much longer I'll be able to withstand, but
you may want to, at least in the meantime, before you, because it's going to take a while for you to upload even a small amount.
Yeah.
You may want to just get a big drive and copy your data to it, and then give it to somebody, or you could encrypt it too. You can use Apple's encryption stuff so that somebody else couldn't get into it. But you could give it to some trusted person to at least hold for you, that so it's off-site in case you have a disaster on your site. Because that's
true.
That's the main reason for having it. I feel like having a remote cloud backup.
That's true.
Is to,
just have your data somewhere else.
Because even if you back all your stuff up locally, if you have a fire or something,
right,
it's just gone.
Yeah.
And so
true.
Anyway.
True. No, good info. Great.
Yeah.
Keith, we'll revisit Backblaze again in another year or two, whatever it is.
Okay.
And maybe by then I will have signed up for the service. So we'll find hopefully it'll be sooner than that, but who knows? Who knows what the real thing will be. Okay, very good. All right, that's Backblaze. Thank you very much, Keith. We will take a quick break and come back with more on Tech Move. Welcome back to Tech Move. It is Rod Louie and Keith Moreau, and we are coming down to the final segment of the show, and we want to do something that we kind of teased at the start of this episode, and that is something that Keith has been drooling over I don't know, for a little while now, since it was announced, just because of the possibilities of this thing. It's the Blackmagic Designs Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. And Keith, you do have one in your possession now as we speak. Is that correct?
I have one in my sweaty little hands.
And okay, let's just get down to brass tacks right now.
Yes.
Is it terrific?
It is so much better than I thought it would be.
Really?
It is amazing. It is like almost the most favorite camera I've ever bought.
Get out of here. Really?
Yeah. There's a lot of reasons for it, but I think one of the reasons is that I feel like I'm back in the 5D Mark II days, except instead of having a, kind of crappy...
a 50-pound boat anchor attached to you?
No. The 5D Mark II days was just, it was a DSLR.
Yeah.
And it was the first one to shoot.
But it was heavy too. I remember you bringing those. I remember being on location with you with that thing. It was huge. It was enormous. It was like a C200 on steroids. It seemed like.
No. It was
not that bad, but it was pretty big.
It was a largish. Well, this one's not much smaller than it, but I think maybe because I had all this stuff, it was rigged out and everything.
You did. You had the moon put on that thing. It was fantastic.
Yeah, but just on its own, just kind of carrying it around. It's basically just a camera with a really okay. So here's the thing about, say, the back in the Canon DSLR days. Those had a viewfinder. You had an EVF on them.
Yep.
The little viewfinder, but they were really bad. They were like so bad that you couldn't do anything with them. Really, you couldn't focus with them. You could just kind of see the indicators on them.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't really even be able to tell if you were in focus. They were that bad. Back then, the EVFs are terrible. So because of that, you couldn't really even use it much other than just general framing, right? You couldn't use it for focusing, which is the main reason to use it. So And so it's kind of similar to this one in that because there's no EVF at all on the Blackmagic 4K, there's no EVF. All there is an LCD. So that kind of reminds me of, but just the size, shape, and kind of beautiful quality of the image, it recalls back to those days because the image on the 5D Mark II was, for the time, it was like game-changing beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the shallow depth of field and all.
Yeah.
But this is like having what I've always wanted, which is a cinema level camera in a small DSLR package. This has never existed before. Really, this has never existed before. The GH5s and those and the Sony A7s and all that, they just don't get to this level.
And you're talking about image quality?
Yes, I'm talking about image quality.
Yeah.
I'm talking about image. I mean, this is all about image quality.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that this has, I feel like, that nothing else has in this form factor.
Wow.
And very little has even in a larger form factor. For example, I think this image might be better than the C200s that I have, that are gigantic and really expensive.
Yeah.
This camera only costs like $1,300. You know, that's another thing about it. It's just, you can get like 10 of these and it'll still be less than a rigged out C200, you know, with a lens and stuff. So it's interesting because it's kind of awakened this excitement for cameras that I haven't had for a little bit. Yeah. You know, and I get little excitements here and there, like when I get a GH5, okay, it's another camera, I get to explore it and stuff, but it still has limitations and image quality and stuff like that. I get the C200, it's great, but it's big and it's not useful in all situations. This is something I can actually carry around, and I can shoot if I want. I could shoot raw 4K in 60p. Yeah. If I want, you know? And adding these things to it to make it a little bit more versatile is not that big of a deal. So anyway, that's my initial impression, is that I just absolutely love it. It's just,
wow.
Yeah.
Now, let's also say in the past, Blackmagic Design they've always had some great cameras come out. But would you say that this is by far and away just the greatest thing they've put out thus far?
Yes, I think it is. I think it is, because I think that it serves a larger audience, a larger potential buyers than any of their other cameras. I feel like their other cameras in the past were really specialized. Like they had a lot of limitations, so you had to be kind of a niche buyer to want one.
I would agree with that. With that. I mean, I never considered purchasing a Blackmagic Design for myself.
Yeah.
I always knew it was for like filmmakers like yourself and ones who had, you know, the dedicated, you know, business to do that. But looking at the pictures of it, looking at pictures that you've shown me of your own personal rig, it looks like something that, I mean, it really looks, I mean, forgive me, Blackmagic Design, for saying it. It really looks cute. Yeah, it's cute. It's cute, and it's not small. It's not as small as a GH5, really. It's a bit wider. It's basically like a third wider than the GH5. Everything else is about the same. So just imagine a GH5 and kind of stretch it out a third. Okay. Make it wider. Right. But just looks like, it sounds like it can do so much. It can do so much when it comes to cinematic filming. That's the thing that sets it apart. Okay. Well, and we could talk about some of the pros and cons. I have a list of things. Let's go with some of the pros that really stand out in your mind. So the pros are that whatever Micro Four Thirds sensor they're using, I'm not sure if it's something they designed or something they're just using that maybe even the Panasonics use, is that coupled with whatever electronics they have to process it is really good. It is very filmic. It is, the noise patterns that are on there are very organic when it is noisy, because it can get noisy. If you bump up the ISO in certain areas, it can get noisy. But the noise is nice. It's not blocky or electronic looking. It looks like film. Looks a lot like film noise. So that's something that makes it look more like film, probably. The fact that the noise is organic. I think that's like the main selling point, is that the images that come out of that sensor and go through the minimal processing look really, really good. And then you couple that with
pretty good low light performance, actually.
That's what I'm interested to hear about. You know, because let's talk real quickly. Let's do a comparison: GH5, GH5S, and this new Blackmagic design camera. Low light. What? How do they compare?
It's pretty comparable to the GH5S.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say, but I think in some ways it's maybe better, and I'll have to explain why. I'm just going to look in my manual here and go to a certain page and open it, because it actually talks a little bit about. I'm going to go to page 35.
Well, while you look that up, let me throw this out at you. When you say it has good low light performance, to me, good low light performance for me is like, let's say, let's say you set your ISO high at like 800 or something like that, and it's still a decent image.
Yeah.
And very usable for me personally. What are we talking about here? And I consider that, and that's how I consider good low light performances, is when you can hit that 800 ISO, still use something, but then anything after that 1,000, 1,200, like you said, it looks a little too blocky, looks a little too electronic-y, all this stuff. How about this Blackmagic design camera?
Yeah, if you use the ISO, if you use this certain ISOs intelligently, and I'm going to give some advice on that later, then it is really, really, really clean for this level of camera. If you choose the wrong ISOs, then it can get kind of noisy.
So you have to play around a little bit with it.
You just have
dial
to
it in just right.
Well, you have to know some rules. Like you can't just keep turning up the. It's not like a lot of other cameras where they have one native ISO, and you just turn up the ISO and it just gets noisier and noisier. And there's actually a little it's a dual ISO camera. So there's a couple like that out there now. There's like a lot of the Panasonics, the Varicams are like that. The new Panasonic Eva is like that. The GH5S is like that. And they have a circuit in there that is two different electronic circuits which you can switch between, and one circuit is amplifying the sensor stuff for a certain ISO, and then you can switch to a different circuit that amplifies it very well to another ISO. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But anyway, if you're kind of in between and you choose the wrong ISO, you can get bad results because you're using the worst performance of the amplification circuit.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So, but we'll talk more about how that works maybe later.
Sure.
So yeah, I would say low light, it is, well, I think it's way better than any other Blackmagic camera out there right now.
That's good. Oh, that's cool.
I think it's better than the Ursa. I don't know for sure because I haven't used the newest Ursa Mini Pro, but from what I've heard, it is actually better than Ursa Mini Pro. I have an older Ursa Mini, and I'm sure it's better than that. I think it's probably rivaling the GH5S, but here's the thing. The GH5S, one of the reasons it's so good in low light is that it does a lot of noise reduction on its own. So, and they don't tell you this, the GH5S.
You mean it does it like in camera?
Yes, it does it in camera. And actually the Sonys do that too. So this is the thing about like the A7S, A7S2 and 3. Or actually the 3's not out yet. But the A7S2.
Unless we're breaking news right now. But that'd be awesome. Okay, go on.
Yeah. When you start bumping up the ISO and you're getting to these ridiculous ISOs, there's a lot of noise reduction going on. And I don't know if you've used post-processing noise reduction on things, like Neat Video or other apps that do noise reduction. Have you ever used anything like that?
No.
Okay.
I have not. I've not ventured that far.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of that used in cinematography these days. In fact, it's actually used just in general for filmmaking. It's especially with the raw workflow because sensors are noisy. But if the sensor puts out a certain type of noise and is good enough, the noise can be pretty well reduced without too much loss in quality. But what happens is what noise reduction does is it samples the noise and then it cancels it out. But in doing that, it will actually cancel out some of the detail of the image too. So you get less noise, but then things look kind of mushy, kind of plasticky. And that's kind of what the A7s do and kind of what the GH5S does. So you can bump up and you can get stuff that looks pretty clean, but if you start looking into the image more, blowing it up and looking at details, it's kind of mushy. It's like details have just been glossed over, as if you use the smudge tool in Photoshop. They're just details are just wiped out. So you actually might see more detail in a noisy image, but it's noisy, but you could actually make out things. Whereas a noise-reduced image would have no detail where there was before, but it would have less noise. So it's kind of a compromise. Kind of like, I don't know, when you're on your TV, when you turn up the sharpening, everything starts getting kind of edgy and noisy. But then you can turn on your TV, you can turn on noise reduction, and then all that stuff quiets down, but there's less detail. Correct. It's kind of the same thing. So the thing about the Blackmagic design Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, which is a huge name.
Right, it is.
But and I'm just going to say Pocket 4K.
Okay.
So for the Pocket 4K, there's two modes of recording. One is RAW, and one is ProRes. Okay. It doesn't record in MP, any other compressed formats. It just records those two. So basically, two long up formats, two interframe formats. And if you use RAW, there's no noise reduction. So just in general, it's going to be a noisier image no matter what ISO you use, whether it's the optimal ISOs or the non-optimal. It's just going to be noisy, or noisier. Okay, if you use ProRes, then there is actually it's going through some type of noise reduction circuit. So if I guess I would say if you're shooting in extreme low light, like at 6400 or in that area, you might want to use ProRes because you're going to get a little bit of the inherent noise reduction coming out of the camera. If you shoot those high ISOs with RAW, you're probably going to have to do some post-processing noise reduction. But the quality of it's going to be so much better that you're going to get a pretty good result. So, but just coming out of the camera, if you don't want to do any post-processing, there might be some noise here and there. Maybe more than the GH5S or equivalent, but the GH5S is kind of giving you this baked-in noise reduction, and you can't do anything about it. You're stuck with this mushy image.
Right.
So it's kind of like your choice, but that's what makes this a cinema camera versus like the GH5, which is not really a cinema camera. So
that's very interesting there. That's, for me, I always think that it's all about capturing an image, and maybe you can turn it into a cinema image.
Yeah.
With a lot of post production and all this kind of stuff, but. Now we're so like when you shoot this thing, and maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit with the Pocket 4K. The image that comes straight out of it just looks pretty darn great right out of the box.
If you want to get the best dynamic range and the most cinematic quality, you have to shoot in their film mode, which is kind of like a log mode.
Okay. Yep.
So but you do have the ability to use a LUT to at least look on the LCD screen an approximation of what it might look like if you used a LUT in post-production. So that way you can see like a more normal image, like more like what your eye is seeing, but the camera is going to be recording in this log format, and I wouldn't recommend recording in other formats. There's no point. If you're going to use this camera, if you're going to choose other formats to shoot this camera in, you might as well choose an GH5. Seriously.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Because the other formats are squeezing the dynamic range down. They're not giving you that full dynamic range that the sensor can provide. So what's the point? You're going through all this work and then you're going to shoot on a squeezed image. It's like, why even buy this camera for that? Right. So shoot in film but then you have to do some post processing. But putting on a LUT's pretty easy in post. It's not hard. So you just have to put it into an editing software and add the LUT, and that's quick and easy.
Nice.
Maybe I'll go on with some of the other pros that I like.
Yeah.
Okay. So good user interface. I don't know if you've seen any or played with any of the Blackmagic cameras.
I have not been able to do that.
Okay, so I should come and visit you, and we can go through it sometime. It's pretty
Excellent.
Cool. First impression is, wow, this is kind of infantile looking, because it's so simple looking. The lettering is really big, and it's very like the fonts are nice, and it's not like the typical Sony or Panasonic LCDs where the fonts, they look like they're from the 70s.
Yeah,
teletypes.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
which it
True.
actually looks like an iPhone. You know, the fonts and everything, they're scaled well. They have smooth edges. They're not all blocky. But the user interface, and it's big because it's a 5-inch screen, so it's basically like looking at a full like iPhone X. But it's very, very simple, but easy to use and easy to get to things quickly. I think part of it is because there's not that many parameters to adjust. You know, so if you took like an A7 or Panasonic interface and you just removed 2/3 of the parameters,
Yeah.
it would be a lot easier to use. But so part of it is just the fact there's less parameters to control. Like I don't think there's any control over picture profile. You just basically get 3. You get their super like just regular Rec 709. You get the extended Rec 709, which gives you more highlights, and then you get the film mic, which is log. I don't think you can go in there and actually adjust anything more in there. It's just gonna record those. Like you can't bump up the black level a little bit or smooth out the highlights or do anything like you can actually on the Sonys and Panasonics or other cameras. So I think maybe it's because they don't give you that many choices. It's simpler. But in a way, it's also just like I don't have to worry about that now. I don't have to mess with that.
I would imagine that's probably pretty good, actually. You know,
Yeah.
I think isn't that always the complaint about like our Panasonics is that the menu system is sometimes just so deep and detailed because you can control so much of it that most everybody just misses something. They just can't get to stuff. And once you set it, you never touch it again because you're afraid you might goof something else up. Here, it doesn't. It sounds like you almost eliminate that.
Yeah, it just eliminates messing stuff up. Yeah, like the other time when I couldn't get my Panasonic out of auto ISO, and like I didn't know how to do that, and it's just some like. Because there's so many menu options, and anyway, yeah. So that's maybe part of why it's so simple. But just in general, it's just I think it's whoever designed the interface is very smart, and it's kind of like the Apple kind of point of view. Just keep it simple. Don't give people too many choices, and then they can actually focus on working. So that part's really cool. The interface, the LCD image is huge. It's probably over twice as big than most other SLRs, digital SLRs. It's 5 inches wide. It's amazing. I'm going to measure the diagonal right now. I have a little ruler here.
That's pretty big.
I'm just going to verify that the actual size. Yeah, it's actually exactly 5 inches wide.
Wow.
So it's pretty big. It has, I guess there's a con in that too, and I can talk about it in the cons, but I think for user interface point of view, like touching things and moving stuff, going to the menus and moving around, it makes it easier because bigger is easier. It's like a bigger area for your finger to press.
Sure, right.
And the image itself on the LCD, whatever technology they're using, is really nice. It's like an iPhone, so it's like a new iPhone. So it's a very high quality interface. Yeah,
great.
It's not. Yeah, a lot of camera manufacturers cheap out on their LCDs. I don't know why they don't just put better ones in. This costs $1 more per camera or $10 more. I don't know why they're so bad.
Yeah.
But this one's really, really good, and it's large, and the touchscreen on it works really well. It's very responsive. It's not like there's no lag or anything. A really great pro is the fact that there's a USB-C output, and on most cameras, that USB-C output or whatever USB output is just to control things or maybe to charge the camera.
Right.
In this case, it actually, I think you can charge the camera or power the camera through it, but the main thing is that you can actually send the file out through that to a hard drive. And
so you could directly plug some sort of external, like HD hard drive out there to this thing to record.
Exactly. And so
using USB-C.
Yes, using USB-C, which has a very high data rate, which can support really high data rates, and pretty much anything this thing could spit out, I think it could support. There are two other ways to record internally. There's a CFast 2 port or card slot, and there's also a QSD or the extended SD port, so the super fast interface SD port. Card slot and not port card slot. And they just there's two slots. Those are great. The CFast, I have a bunch of CFast 2 cards, so it's not really an issue. Like, I don't need to cheap out and use an SSD because I have a bunch of CFast cards for my other cameras. But I actually did get a smallish Samsung 1 terabyte SSD, which is recommended. It's called the T5. And not too expensive. I think a couple $100, maybe a little bit more. And
that's pretty cheap for a SSD 1 terabyte.
I think so.
That sounds. They used to be super expensive, right? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, they used to be super expensive.
Yeah. So that part's pretty cool. It's really small and light, so that part's really cool too. It doesn't add anything much to the bulk and weight of the camera. And so I've just been testing with that, and I've been able to record uncompressed RAW to it. I think 30 frames per second. I don't think you can do 60. I don't think the data rate can support that on this drive. But I actually haven't tried 60. I just heard that it doesn't work. But I've been doing uncompressed RAW, and it's recorded flawlessly.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So the thing that not only is it cheaper, because if you got a CFast 2 1 terabyte, even if they made them, it would probably be like $2,000. So like 10 times the cost. I mean, for example, I paid like $800 for 512 gigabyte cards. So half the size of this, right? I paid $800. So you can see the price difference. And these were low cost cards. They were like the best deal you could get. So but not only is it a lot less expensive and pretty convenient, but the fact is you can take this SSD off and you can plug it right into your computer, and you can either copy it super fast or just edit off the thing, or do the transcoding right off the hard drive. So say you want to transcode it from RAW to ProRes or some other format. You don't have to spend the time to copy it. You can just start editing with it. Or you can
that's just right there, just right off the drive.
Yeah. So I envision just having a bunch of if I need a quick turnaround, just plugging them right into my computer and then editing off that, and then later doing the backup or whatever. It just gives you more versatility to do editing, because those SSDs are super quick and you can edit off of them. So that's another pro. Let me see. What other pros are there? Oh, the ProRes support. Okay, so it actually supports ProRes, and I'm just going to look at the interface here for a second. So I'm going to go into the menu and then go into the record. So it's got two selections for codec and quality. One is RAW. It goes lossless, 3:1 and 4:1 compression. So you can record RAW lossless, which is kind of ridiculous amount of data being used, but the best quality, or you can use the compressed form of RAW. But this is the old kind of RAW. It's not the Blackmagic RAW, which is not even available on this camera yet. So this is the old style of RAW, where it's just a bunch of still images kind of grouped into a folder for every clip. So it's crazy when you look at these folders, when you transfer these to your hard drive, it's just like thousands of these little pictures. And then your editing software combines them all together. It's really annoying. Blackmagic RAW is going to be more like a ProRes file, which is one file per clip. Anyway, and then there's ProRes, and if I select ProRes, I can get HQ, I can get 422, LT, and proxy. So here's the thing. I would probably always record in HQ, because that gives you 10-bit recording. When you go to 422, I believe it goes down to 8-bit. Okay, so that means you don't get the advantage of the log formats. So I would always record in HQ. And there's different resolutions for all these formats. 4K DCI, which is a little bit wider than standard UHD. It's 4096 by 2160. And then there's Ultra HD, and then there's HD. So 3 different sizes. So so the fact that it has built-in ProRes is pretty cool, because sometimes you don't really need to record RAW.
Right.
And you save a lot of space. But now I'm really hoping that Blackmagic RAW is available for this camera soon, because that's going to give you the quality of RAW, but with a ProRes size.
Yeah.
So that's going to be really, really awesome.
Yeah, that'll be helpful.
Yeah. So those are all the pros and there's more pros probably, but this is the short list that I have the pros.
Well, you'll discover more, but I personally always love to hear the cons of things. so let's move to that. Let's see what Keith Moreau. It's probably not huge ones, but they're probably little annoyances that could be improved upon.
Yeah. So here's the thing: the camera's $1,300. So you have to make a few allowances for this. So I guess maybe these are petty, these complaints. But there's a couple ones that
most of them are, yes.
Yeah. I don't think they can actually do anything about most of these, but there's a couple they could do stuff about. Okay, so I think the number one complaint that I've heard on the internet, and that I haven't really experienced it being like totally bad, but I can see it becoming bad over time, is the battery door underneath where you remove the battery.
Yeah.
So I
mean,
is
it loose or something? It's a little.
It doesn't seem to engage positively. So in pretty much every other DSLR I've had ever since the beginning of time, no matter how cheap they were, including my Quick Take 100 back in 1995 or whenever they came out, the battery door has been like a no-brainer. Like, you never thought like this battery door is gonna break, or it's kind of cheap, or it doesn't latch properly. Like every single camera that had a battery from the beginning of time till now has had a reliable battery door.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I don't know, I think they've made other battery doors in their other cameras before. Like I think the Pocket, the original Pocket had this. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, they couldn't get it together on this battery door. And I hope that maybe they'll have a recall and just ship people out new battery doors they can install themselves that work better. I hope it's not an inherent design flaw or something. It's but I think if you do search on the internet and search for battery door and Pocket 4K, you'll find a lot of complaints. Some people's are really defective, like they just pop open for no reason.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now it's not disastrous because there's still another latch that holds the battery in, but still it's annoying that if you're hand holding it, it just pops open. It's like something to deal with. They need to figure out how to make the latch more positive. I think it might be the travel of the latch. You know how there's that little button that you kind of slide and it unlatches it on all these DSLRs?
Right.
It seems like the travel on this is really, really small. Like it's too small. It should be a longer travel. Like it should have more positive engagement, because you're never quite sure if it's actually engaged or not. You just, if it doesn't open, then you know it's engaged. Like there's just a very, very faint click, like almost like the little latch is really, really short, you know? And so that the part that holds it to the camera is just too short. Maybe they can make a longer version or something like that. So yeah, they need to fix that, because for any kind of camera of any level of quality, this is like probably the worst one that's ever been made. Oh, so like even if you buy $200, the cheapest, point and shoot,
right,
it's still got a better battery door. So
nice. That's great. That's
good.
Like,
and then okay, so that's my worst complaint. Another complaint which I don't think they can do anything about is the fixed LCD. So the fixed LCD is kind of like the old, it reminds me of a lot of the Canon DSLRs which still have fixed LCDs, right?
Right.
But then they have EVS, so you can actually look through the EVF if you need to. But it is like a lot of cameras that have fixed. It's kind of big, so the fact that it's fixed takes up a lot of real estate. And I can see that they just couldn't get a flip out to work with so they had, okay, do we make a fixed LCD with a gigantic, nice LCD, or do we make one that flips out like a Panasonic GH series? Or do we have something in between, like a tilt and up and down like the Sonys?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the Sonys, they're also kind of not that great either, because tilting up and down is not as useful as having a fully tiltable, swingable, flip out LCD like a lot of other cameras have.
Right.
But I think they just said, let's just keep it simple, let's keep it cheap. The LCD is a really important part of it, so let's make it high quality, but let's not make it movable in any way. So that makes it a lot less usable, because if you're shooting anything other than eye level, it makes it inconvenient to use.
Right. Unless you're using some sort of external monitor or something like that.
Yeah. If you have, and I think that's the thing about this. It's a cinema camera, so it's not necessarily meant to be, I don't know, like used as a run and gun camera on its own.
Even though it's so small, you would think you would want to, though,
Yeah. But it's kind of like filming with an iPad, So anybody that is going to be using this for run and gun, they're just going to be holding it in front of them like an idiot, looking at this gigantic LCD screen.
Yep.
So it's kind of like filming with an iPhone, I guess. That, except you got this big camera attached to it. So, so here's the thing with, even back in the old days with the the Canons and those that didn't have a good EVF and also a fixed LCD. They needed some form of stabilization handheld. And when you're just holding a camera with one or two hands, you get a lot of shakes. It's really impossible to hold it that steady, no matter how steady a person you are.
Right.
And this camera, especially since it has such a large LCD, you can't hold it close to you because you can't even see the LCD that close to your face.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ideally, you would be holding the camera with your elbows totally bent and the camera up against your face, and
right.
you can't really make out the LCD do anything that way. So then the alternative, you hold it out like a foot, right? And that's the least steady way of holding a camera. You know, there's a lot of leverage. The camera's heavier. You're going to be shaking, and you'll notice that in the footage. So what's the best way to still have a lightweight camera and then hold it is to have 3 points of contact. And the way I did it in the past was having a loop that went on the LCD and the old Canon cameras. I had Z finders, and I pushed that loop against my eye. So I have two hands and my eye, and that's actually really stable. That can get you, even with a non-stabilized lens, that can get you some really good results without having a lot of bulk. So unfortunately, the loops, there's one loop I think available for this 5-inch, because it's it would have to be pretty darn large, and also kind of inconvenient because you would need to remove the loop to activate some of the menu things and work with the menu if you wanted to, the touch screen. So that's kind of it's kind of a con, the fact that it has this issue and no EVF. So there is one loop. It's called the Grid loop. It's made in Argentina, and when I go to their site, I get all these warnings from all my browsers saying, this is an insecure site. Do you want your computer taken over?
Right.
Do you give us permission to go to the site?
Right. That's great. That's awesome.
So I'm a little apprehensive of ordering and putting my credit card number onto the site.
Yeah, because Shlomo is going to be monitoring right now in his basement, collecting your IP address and knocking on your door. Fabulous.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll have to figure out another way to buy it from them. But I do want it. It's maybe $250, so it's not super cheap, and it's pretty gigantic. I'll put a link to it or something in the show notes. But I probably am going to wind up getting this, and I know some other filmmakers have gotten it and like it. But I believe it's only magnetic. It's not, or clip-on. So it's not something that flips up, which would be optimal.
Yeah.
I had that on my Z Finder, so I had a system towards the end. They created a system where you could stick the frame up, and then it had a little hinge on it, so you could flip it up and then use the LCD if you needed to, or look at it.
Yeah, they had. I know they made stuff very much like what you're describing, even for the old GH1s.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? It was
yes.
I mean, of course, it would have pulled off the articulating screen, but nonetheless, is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. So, maybe if I get these larger versions, I'll make some hinge myself and make it work. Yeah. But that would be the ultimate solution, because then you could have a run and gun camera with good stabilization, get a good view of the LCD pressed against your face, flip it up if you needed to just use it in another way.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a con. Poor battery life is another con. So
is that right? Poor battery life.
It's kind of reminds me of the old A7 twos, ones and twos. Mm-hmm. Just like you're lucky if you get maybe 40 minutes out of a battery.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, and the thing is, I have a lot of batteries from my Canon days and from a couple monitors that used these. They're the Canon E6 batteries, so they're very common. They're pretty inexpensive for the third-party ones, but they're pretty small. And this camera draws a lot of power. You can tell. It's got a little fan vent on the bottom that's facing downward and right below the lens, and that thing is just like a little heater. It's just like always blowing out. It's really quiet, so that part's good. But it's like a little heater. Like if you want your hands warm, put it in front of this camera. It'll warm up your hands. But like heaters, it uses a lot of power.
Sure.
So yeah. So these little batteries, and I went through all my batteries, and I just realized how basically I should throw away almost all of them, because they're so old. They've been used a lot. And they just lose their chemistry over time. And I think I have maybe 3 batteries that I would even keep out of like 20 that I have.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I've kind of been testing the reliability of this camera and the batteries just by putting it on full raw recording and just having it fill up the hard drive and then see how long the battery lasts. And so I've already thrown away like 10 batteries because they last like 5 minutes. So,
well, I have a question. So, like, out of all the, like, the new ports that are on the camera, USB-C and all the other things, can you charge maybe to a bigger external power source at the same time, or really is there no ability to do that?
No, actually, there's just like most other cameras, there's a power port, a dedicated 12 volt power port. Actually, I should put that in my cons list. The power port is a connector. It's a 2-pin connector that locks, and I'm not crazy about it because it's kind of fiddly to lock it and unlock it. It's too robust for such a little connector. But it is secure. I mean, once it's in there, it's not the industry standard Limo connector, which there's a billion of them out there. It's this non-industry standard Weibu connector, a WEIBU or something, and it's a 2-pin, and the only place you can really get them is from Blackmagic, and they're not making them yet. So, so you have this 12 volt power port, which you can use. They do supply an AC adapter to it. So if I wanted to, I could cut it up and turn it into a battery adapter or something, which I've done with other cameras. It's also got the ability to power it by dummy port, just like all cameras. So you can have the underside battery door open, and you can plug in a dummy battery port, and you can power that with the common batteries.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
at least
one
you
of the
can do
most.
that.
Yeah, so for example, I just did a quick test with my Atomus power station, which is a 2-battery thing that has all kinds of adapters, and one of them is the E6 adapter that's meant for Canons. And I powered that up, and it worked perfectly. So that worked with a dummy. It's kind of gigantic, so I don't necessarily know if I want to use that on this camera right now. Right. I want to try to keep the solution small. So I have these other ports that I was using, these other battery adapters which have been retired, which I was using in the early days of the A7s, because I didn't have the Atomus power station yet. And I think I'm going to adapt one of those to the battery port and see how that works. I haven't spent the time to find to see if I have the right size adapters and things, because some of the plugs aren't quite matching.
Sure.
But I will do that soon. There are now tons of people that are developing battery solutions. There's a couple out there that use the battery dummy battery port. There's one that's kind of cool. I think I can't remember, but I'll put it in the show notes. It's a thing that just mounts underneath the camera. I think it's called Power Base or something like that.
Almost like a battery grip type of thing. Would it be?
It's not a grip. It's actually just something that you mount your camera to. Like it's just like a block, like a rectangular block.
Yep.
But I don't know if I want something that big, and I'm not sure if it's versatile enough. I think you need to plug it into a charger. I don't think it takes regular batteries. So what I really want is a Sony L series battery adapter that's convenient. That would be the best choice, because it would probably power the camera for like 2 to 3 hours, which is adequate, and then it wouldn't take up too much space. And if I wanted to, I could just use smaller versions of those batteries and make it even smaller. There's actually 3 or 4 rigs out there. The Tilta Cage, which is coming out soon, has a battery handle that integrates a Sony L series battery with a handle, which seems like a really good solution. So I might get that when it comes out.
And who's that buying again? Who's that buying?
Tilta.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you could do a search on Tilta Pocket 4K Cage, you'll probably find it out there. I have a feeling they're going to be in very short supply. But it seems like a pretty good solution.
Oh yeah,
although
I see
I'm
it
not
right here.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I want to, get their whole solution or not. But
yeah, and you're right. It is a whole solution that you could choose to get. Ooh, that's a pretty nice little looking rig.
Yeah, it looks like it might actually be really, really cool and somewhat handheld. But I don't know how long it's going to take to get out there. I'm going to see if my friend at Texas Media Systems can get one. Because that might, if you can get like an early version, that would be pretty cool. So getting back to cons, the buttons and switches, pretty much all of them on the camera are a little bit on the cheap side. I think they're functional, and actually in a way they're not clicky, so that means that they won't make noise and stuff when you press them, or make vibration by some kind of like clickiness that happens with most cameras. But at the same time, conversely, they seem a little bit on the cheap side. Just I think it's more of a cosmetic issue. It's not a reality issue. Like, I think they'll be functional just as long as other cameras, but they just give the impression of not being that solid. So yeah, so I don't really know the ramifications of the reliability of that. Anyway, EVF, I would just love to have some type of, even a poor quality EVF, kind of like the 5D Mark II had, just something to push up against my eye so that I could frame, and maybe see important indicators like recording time, record on and off and stuff. Nothing super detailed. I mean, I think they could have done it. It might have made the camera have a bulge on top or something, but I think they could have done it, and then it would be like the perfect camera pretty much, except for the battery cover. But
right, exactly.
But but they don't have that.
Well, just to go back to that real quick.
Yes.
Does it have an actual battery lock within the door?
It actually does. And
so if the door open, no big deal. It's just annoying and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world.
That's what we call duct tape. That's what we
exactly. Yeah, a little duct tape, a little gaffer's tape.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that would keep that annoyance factor down. But getting back to the EVF, so I was, I have a bunch of EVFs. I have like 3 or 4 EVFs of varying qualities. I have my Gradical, right, which is a super high-end EVF, the professional one from Zacuto.
Right.
And it's kind of big. It's not super big, but it's still substantial. And I mounted it to the camera, and I got it to work, kind of. But I think because the cage I have is kind of bulky, because it's just a kind of generic cage that sticks out quite a bit and adds a lot of volume to the thing, it was a little bit too much. It just kind of made the unit ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I guess it could work in a pinch, and it's a really high quality EVF, and it has a lot of tools in it. So I guess I could use that. I think all this is going to be clearer if I can use EVFs when I get a slimmer cage. So I'll talk about the cages later at the end of this. But
so in our pre-production meeting, you sent me a picture of the EVF. Is that the one you're talking about that you feel might be a little bit too big? Because I think it looks great.
Oh, okay. The one that I sent you actually was the small HD EVF.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's not the same one, right?
No, that's mounted on a small HD monitor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the thing that's cool about that is that it's a smallish 5-inch monitor, and it optionally has the swing away EVF.
Ah, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess theoretic, and the reason I looked at that and even entertained that was that one of the flaws of this, remember, is the fixed LCD, the LCD that's just flat on the back, and you can't tilt it up or down.
Right.
So any shots that you have that are below your eye level by a few inches or above are not going to be that great. You're not going to see this LCD that well. Although the off axis on the LCD is quite good, so you could kind of make it out even if it's above your head and forward a little bit, or way below your head and forward. You could still maybe kind of frame stuff, not perfectly, but kind of frame it. But still, it's better to be able to tilt up or down in those situations, right? So having another LCD on the camera allows you to do that, because you could swing it any way you want.
Right.
You could even do blogging where it's facing you. So the reason I chose that is that I could use it as a monitor, but then also use it as an EVF by putting that swing away thing on. So that's a possibility. I'm still gonna. It's a little bit too high and bulky with this cage. So when I get a lower cage and get everything really close to the camera, I might try it again and see how it works. It's still a little bit ridiculous and makes it kind of heavy. So we'll see. It's starting to kind of once you start adding all this stuff, it starts taking away from the elegance of this camera.
Right.
And then it just becomes like any other cinema camera. Like, for example, I could strip down my C200 and it already has an EVF in it. It already has an LCD, and it's got autofocus and a whole bunch of other features that this doesn't have. So it's kind of like diminishing returns when you start adding all this extra stuff to make it work, better.
Yeah, but we are talking about a different image quality too at the same time.
I would say, yeah. I mean, maybe I was overstating it when I thought this was better than the C200, but I think it at least rivals it. I think it at least rivals the C200, which is amazing, right? Because C200 is like $8,000 camera,
right?
And so
exactly.
Yeah. So, but when you start adding all this stuff onto it, and it doesn't have built-in NDs, right? So that's another. I guess that's another con. I didn't even list that. And then the lack of good, accurate and continuous autofocus, and then other things, then it starts becoming like heavier, bigger, and still not as functional as say a stripped down C200. So it starts getting to that point where the balance tips back to a professional cinema camera that's stripped down,
right?
Or even FS5 or something. But the FS5 the image is crap compared to these guys. So anyway, So I'm going to experiment more with the EVF. Maybe there's some solution, but I think, to be honest with you, I think the solution is just to get a good loop that swings away, or that can easily detach so I can access the screen. So I guess when I order that from the Russian impersonators that just take my money and all my credit info,
right,
which leads down a path of eventually me going to prison.
Send you those emails telling them that one of your loved ones is trapped in Uganda or something like that.
Yes, or one of my loved ones needs money quick.
Yeah,
please send it here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So when I order that and that happens, I'll let you know.
Good. Thank you.
But
well, I guess you won't be able to because they'll probably have my name as the person in need. So. Well, great. Well, let's talk quickly. I think in our meeting, you kind of had something about the autofocus. I thought autofocus would be pretty great here, especially with some native lenses and stuff.
Yeah, it's unfortunately the autofocus is kind of a gimmick on this camera.
Oh, really?
It's similar. Actually, there's no really good autofocus on many of the Blackmagic cameras. I don't think any of them have continuous autofocus. Mm-hmm. They just have a push autofocus. So there's a box that you can move around, or you can touch on the screen, and it moves the box around by just touching where you want, and then it'll just instantly focus within that box. And so whatever it thinks is supposed to be framing on, it'll try to focus on there. But it goes back and forth and kind of eventually settles on the right spot. I don't know, it might be like kind of the early versions of autofocus from other cameras, right?
Okay.
They didn't just like go right to the spot and hold like some of the new really good ones like the Sonys and the Canons. But they would kind of like go back and forth and go past it and then back and then eventually kind of narrow in on it.
Almost hunting hunting
kind of,
in a way.
Yeah, like hunting and then eventually settle on something. Mm-hmm. So it does the hunting. It does it fairly quickly, but it's still hunting.
Yeah.
So you can't really use it in a usable shot. Like you can't just rack focus from something close to something far, for example.
Okay.
It'll look like you're using crappy autofocus.
Oh,
and then
right.
Yeah, and then when it does actually settle on the focus, it's not. I don't find it to be that accurate. I'm finding it to be a little bit off sometimes. Like it's just not that reliable. Mm. So maybe you could use it to get close, and then you could manually focus the rest of the way. Mm-hmm. So it has some use. Another thing is if you're not at the camera, you could use an app. Blackmagic sells an app for $5, which interacts with this camera through Bluetooth.
Oh,
and it's actually, the app is actually not bad. It's really simple, but it does pretty much everything. It doesn't. I don't think it does every single thing in the menu, but it does a lot of the important things. It doesn't show you an image though. It doesn't transmit the image, which sucks.
Well, that's kind of too bad.
Yeah, but other than that, it transmits a lot of the control data and allows you to do the autofocus. I don't think it allows you to move the autofocus point, but it can just initiate the autofocus. So if you have it in the middle or something, you could try it. You can adjust other things, aperture and other things too. Autofocus, I guess it's better than nothing, but it's just,
Yeah, but it's just,
Yeah, it's just,
Is it so? Is it something that you definitely want with this type of camera? You definitely want to be pulling focus beforehand and not relying on it.
Yeah, I think so.
Really?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it really isn't. This is not really a run and gun type of camera, even though it's so compact. It sounds like it could be, and it really should be.
Well, I mean, run and gun. There's different definitions for run and gun.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It could be like run and gun could be just that you're in a situation where you have a subject that's not moving, and your depth of field is not so shallow that you would need critical focus all the time. So I think it just depends on your definition. I mean, we did run and gun back in the 5D Mark II days, right?
Right.
And those autofocus were terrible as well, right? That was even before any of the good Canon autofocus stuff. So it's kind of similar to those days, and that run and gun was possible. It just takes more time. You have to check it by zooming in. There is a zoom in function on the LCD, which is good. Mm-hmm. So it doubles it, or it significantly magnifies it and makes it easier to focus. Mm-hmm. And there's also peaking, which is not bad on the LCD. So I guess I would say, maybe do the autofocus, just tap it, and then do a manual focus, and then maybe use some of the other focusing tools like the punch-in. I find the punch-in is probably, for me, is the easiest way to focus.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, I just don't think the Blackmagic cameras are ever going to get good autofocus. I don't think it's a priority for them, because kind of by definition, cinema cameras just don't have very good autofocus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's really like they don't even have them usually. Like the high end ones don't even have autofocus. It's like the cinematographers would laugh at you, like if you showed up on a set and you said, how do you autofocus with this? They would just laugh you off the set. So they would point to the specifically dedicated person focus puller, and say that's your autofocus.
There's your autofocus. Right. So, him and his tape measure are ready to go.
Yes.
His Stanley tape measure.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, good.
Although I think they do use laser measurers these days too, which is cool.
See how much the technology has advanced. They got Herman over there pulling with the laser focus. That's good. Well,
yeah,
that's good. Good.
So, yeah. So that's what makes the Canon like the C200 that I have so special, because you can get a cinema level camera, but still get really amazing autofocus, just like really, really good autofocus, like better than any camera.
Yeah.
So and pros are starting to rely on that. They're starting to use that as B cameras or A cameras for situations where they need autofocus, like on gimbals and things like that. Sure. Where you have super shallow depth of field and you just need to track somebody's face. So it is an important thing. It really is. But so some blogger was saying though that shallow depth of field is less necessary when you have really good dynamic range. And so I don't know if that's true or not, but that's this guy's theory. Mm-hmm. And I may tend to believe that, because when you have such great dynamic range, such as this camera, then things are differentiated more. Mm-hmm. There's more detail and different things, and things seem more lifelike. So it's less necessary to trick your eye into focusing on a particular point. So I don't know if that's true or not. That just could be a way of saying I don't really like focusing in shallow depth of field. I'd rather just keep it long depth of field and not worry about autofocus or something.
Right.
So.
Right. So as far as any other things that are going on with the camera, I know that you had mentioned something about the covers on the camera.
Oh, the port covers? Yeah. The port covers are really cool when you first get the unit. They're really they fit really well. They're really rubbery and feel really solid. But the thing is, the minute you take them out, you can't put them back in.
Oh, nice.
They're like,
oh, good.
They're like, well, you can, but they don't fit as well as the first time. They have these little rubber, they kind of have little rubbery like things that stick out and go into your ports. and those things don't fit as well after the first time. So it's kind of weird, you know. So they're just like, they're kind of like the little plastic that you pull off your iPhone.
Oh,
it looks really, really cool.
Right.
And then use it once. You take it off, and then that's it.
And you can never get it back there again. That's good.
So yeah. So kind of, I would rather, but you know, port covers on most gear is not that great, or at least the flexible ones, like some of the rubbery ones, they're not that great. They always get lost.
I agree. The ones that are kind of attached to the cameras are sometimes useful, just so that you can always have them, covered up. But if it's up to you to like take it off, put it in your pocket, and then put it back on again once you're done, forget it. I'll lose it every time. Every time.
Yeah, on my C200s, there's port covers on the XLRs, and like I just noticed the other day that one of them is just totally gone. I have no idea where it is.
Yeah,
if it's on some shoot somewhere or in my bag or whatever. So
right.
Yeah. Anyway, so not. I guess they're not worse than everybody else in regards to that. Port covers are hard. They're a hard thing to manage, because you can have the ones that are just hard, right, and they just kind of flip out like a hinge door,
right,
like on a lot of cameras, like a lot of SLRs, but then they break off or they get in the way because they're just always in one place, and you have to go around them. So I could see the logic of these flexible ones, like you can really move them anywhere you want because they're all rubbery and kind of pull out, but then they don't really push back in, and they're just kind of annoying. So it's a dilemma. I think they should just have like little, I don't know, like little automatic servo controlled, like elevator doors that just open when you get close.
like the Star Trek bridge doors.
Yes, exactly, with a little sound.
Yes, with the
extra sound.
Very good.
It'll happen.
That's
it'll
good.
Happen.
All right. Well, and let's talk now. So a little list of cons, but not really anything that would, I think, prevent folks from really saying, "Oh, this sucks" or anything like that. It sounds like there are things that one could just live with, like all the other products that are out there.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's true, and I think it's just a cost versus convenience thing.
Yeah,
because I think Blackmagic really wanted to make the cost as low as possible, and you could see that they made a lot of these decisions to save on cost and keep it simple. And it's actually kind of hard for me to believe the camera's as cheap as it is. It's kind of unbelievable, but maybe it's not, because it's a fairly simple camera. It's just a good processor, good sensor, and software.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some people would say like the lack of menu options might say, oh, it's that's no good. But for you and for me, maybe we like that. It's all subjective, right? It's all subjective is what you really want to do and stuff.
Yeah, I think so. And I think maybe the fact that you can record RAW maybe eliminates the need to have a lot of options, because you're just taking whatever's on the sensor and storing it.
Yeah. And
then later you can mess with it.
Yeah.
With all the profiles and things that you want to. So maybe there's a reason for that. And maybe the reason that Sony's and all the other non-RAW cameras have all these settings is because you have to mess with it to get a good image.
Right.
In camera.
Right.
So
they're just not going to give it to you right away.
Yeah, something like that.
Yep.
So
okay.
Anyway,
good. Tips. So you got any tips for us? For those of us who maybe have purchased one or maybe thinking about doing it? Is there anything you got for us there?
Yeah. Well, remember we were talking a little bit about ISO, because you were asking about low light capabilities and stuff like that. So yeah. So one of the things about this camera is that it's the dual ISO sensor. Dual native ISO sensor, and dual native means, so there's a certain kind of default sensitivity that is used, a certain default amplifier that is used, and it's just kind of like how can I describe it? I'm trying to think of an analogy. It's kind of like if you had a certain amount of strength where you weren't, like if you're trying to lift weights and you had a strength where you were very comfortable at,
right,
and you could just move really naturally at that strength,
right,
and then when you wanted to lift heavier weights, you could do it, but it wouldn't be as easy. You'd be straining. And conversely, maybe if it was a lighter weight, it wouldn't be forcing enough on you, and therefore it would not be optimal. So basically, and this is a terrible analogy. I should have thought of this before. I should have really thought of a good one. But anyway, maybe I can just talk about it in terms of electronics, because maybe that's just simpler. So it's just like an amplifier. So there's an amplifier for every little pixel that's on the sensor. There's a circuit for it, and then all those pixels send their signals to an amplifier, and the amplifier can be designed to amplify a little bit or a lot. But if it's designed to amplify kind of variably, then the performance goes down. So if it was optimized to amplify times 10 or something, it can be designed really, really well for times 10, like noise and all the other things that go wrong with an amplifier get significantly reduced if it's just fixed. Like it doesn't have to be variable. And so when you start pushing it, and when you say that this naturally 10 times amplifier needs to go to 12, 15, 20, whatever, its performance starts degrading. It starts not performing as well. It still amplifies things, but it's not doing it as cleanly as another amplifier that was designed for that level of amplification. So in this case, there's one that's designed for 400 ISO, and then you could switch it to another amplifier that's designed for 3200 ISO. But I believe it's still using the same sensor elements. It's not like switching sensor elements. So what happens then is the 400 is going to be really, really clean. And it's going to have a pretty good dynamic range. And then as you amplify it more and more, then the noise floor goes up. So whatever's inherently in that sensor and generating noise it'll be higher. So that noise level, which was kind of imperceptible at 400, is actually going to be higher when it's at higher ISOs like 500, 640, 800, 1000. Okay. And then the worst in that lower range, the worst performance is going to be at 1000. And the reason for that is once you get to 1250 ISO, then it actually switches to the higher end amplifier, the one that's amplifying to 3200. But it's actually kind of reducing the amplification. It's doing negative amplification at that point. And so what actually happens when you do negative amplification is that it actually it's like reducing the gain. It's like turning the volume down on your stereo or something. It's actually turning the volume down. It's still basically it's amplifying, but then it's turning it down. And while it's turning it down, it's actually reducing the noise floor of the image. So it's basically making the noise levels even lower and lower and lower. So if you actually have a native ISO, if you actually reduce the ISO below that level and you're still using the same amplifier, it will actually reduce the noise. The drawback is that it also usually reduces the dynamic range. So it's making the noise go lower, but then it's also making the highlights go lower.
So you have to compensate with something, right?
Yeah, you just have to realize that you're not going to get as much highlight information. So that's why when different cameras like the Sonys and the others, they go into log format.
Right.
Sometimes they only let you do it at the native ISO of the sensor and system. So that way they get the most dynamic range, so they can use all the different values within that. But in actuality, it's probably not optimal when it comes to noise. So it's basically a trade-off. So, but it may be also that the camera has so much dynamic range that it doesn't really matter. And you just, as long as your exposure is okay, you actually get a cleaner image with, say, for example, 1250. You get clean image, and maybe you're losing a little bit of dynamic range, but it's not significant, and the reduction in noise is actually worth it for that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to do more tests to see really if I lose a lot in the highlights, etc. But I'm going to say that I think if you don't overexpose too much, that you're probably okay. Whereas I think if you're using the native ISO, you could probably overexpose a lot more and still recover information from the highlights.
Mm.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So for example, if you were at say you're in the 3200 switch, you're in that selection. So that's anywhere from 1250 all the way up. It basically uses the same amplifier from 1250 ISO all the way up. When it's at 3200, it's actually the native ISO. If you wanted to reduce noise, say you're at 3200 and you wanted to reduce noise, you might actually bump up the exposure.
Mm-hmm.
You'd open the aperture or add more light or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you might see on your screen, you might see stuff is getting to be in the blown out range.
Right.
But if you're recording raw, it may be that you can recover a lot of that information, even if it seems like it's blown out.
Mm-hmm.
So, but after a certain point, it really is blown out. It really is that sensor is just totally blown out. You lost information there.
Right.
So maybe you can only go like 1 stop or 2 stops over optimal exposure. But then when you go to 3 stops, you're just totally blown out in the highlights. So you have to do some tests with your subject matter and see how far you can go. For example, with Sony cameras, they look really bad in log format unless you overexpose. Like I go like 1, 2, 3 stops sometimes over.
Mm-hmm.
And then later I will use a LUT that is meant to bring the exposure down by 1, 2, or 3 stops to kind of match it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do that, the noise floor goes down, goes way down.
Yeah.
But then maybe if you're at ISO 1250, which has an inherently better noise profile, maybe you don't want to go +1, +2, or +3 stops over.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you want to just keep it at normal, and then it'll come out really good noise performance, and you won't blow out the highlights. So it's kind of a trade-off.
Yeah.
Between different things, and I think people should experiment on their own with this. But it's actually something that's it's actually inherent in all cameras, really.
Mm.
It's just the ones with more dynamic range. This becomes more of an issue. These cinema cameras, it becomes more of an issue. So,
all right.
Anyway, hopefully that explanation.
No, that's good.
Has some value.
No, that's good. I think that's very good. And
Okay.
how about other tips? I mean, I know you and I talked a little bit about the battery.
Yes.
Situation a little bit earlier on. There are all kinds of external options, and with all the different inputs, outputs on the Blackmagic Designs camera, what can you do with this?
So I guess there's always the option of the dummy battery adapter, which is prevalent and really inexpensive. And so I actually use those. Well, use those all the time with the A7s because they had such terrible battery life.
Right.
A teeny little battery.
Right.
Yeah. So initially I bought some really cheapo ones that just used a Sony L battery, and you just stuck the Sony L batteries are like 3 to 5 times as powerful as the Canon batteries that this uses.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of getting half an hour to an hour, you'd get maybe 2 to 3 hours, which is cool.
Yeah.
Just with one battery. So that's a possible solution. So people can kind of do a DIY. You can buy something on Amazon or wherever that's made for the Canon type battery.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just have this thing that you mount somehow to your cage. It's usually got a 1/4-20 screw hole so that you can mount it to something or put some type of mount on it and attach it to something else like a hot shoe.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just run this funky cord into your battery port.
Yeah, right.
And have it sticking out.
Sure.
But I did that for years.
Yeah.
And still do that on occasion.
Certainly gives you more battery life than any of the other batteries in camera.
Yeah, the in-camera stuff. I'd rather not have to switch batteries all the time. It's annoying.
Right.
But at the same time, then you have this kind of humongous thing hanging on your camera and adding more bulk and weight to it.
Right.
So should you just, have to just think about this battery every half hour and just carry a bunch of batteries and then not have to worry about this big thing and just have fun with it and just have a bunch of batteries in your pocket?
Yeah.
Or do you have to have this thing hanging off and increase the bulk? So I think I'm going to wind up having two modes, which is kind of the run and gun lightweight mode where I just carry a bunch of batteries, and then maybe for the set and forget B camera, just have a big power supply attached to it somehow.
Right.
Maybe even bigger than this one battery they have.
Yeah.
So still kind of experimenting with it. There's also some other battery solutions and these are solutions that have been around forever because this has been an issue with cameras forever. Just people want more battery life.
Yep.
So there's a pretty cool Tilta cage that's coming out. It's not out yet. And we can actually, I think you saw it.
I did see it. It had a lot of options. It didn't seem, I don't know, I didn't look at it that carefully, but it looked to be available because, I mean, there's just so many options you can choose from. You would think that if they're promoting it, it'd be there already. But
yeah, I think some of this stuff is soon to be available. Maybe within a couple weeks.
Okay.
I have a couple calls out for that. But one of the things it's a pretty good cage, and it's not like very expensive for the cage. I think it's like $100. And then it has this. The one thing that I'm interested in is the battery handle. So it's a battery it's like a big handle that's shaped kind of like an oversized L battery, and then you can stick an L-sized battery into it. And I think it actually will go. I think it might even just use the dummy battery port. I don't think it uses the power port on the side of the camera. So that's kind of, in my opinion, that's a little bit of drawback. I'd rather it actually use the power port on the side because I'd rather not have to mess with this extra wire coming out of the battery port and things sticking out below the camera.
Sure.
Because you kind of want to have that open for mounting and other stuff, and you don't want it to dangle. And that's one of the reasons that I don't like the dummy battery solution.
Right.
And also what I've heard is that the power port on the side charges the battery that's inside the camera at the same time. And then if for some reason it fails or runs out of juice, then the internal battery takes over. So it's kind of like a backup.
Yeah.
So if something happens to the power supply, your internal battery is still going to last for like half an hour to 45 minutes. So anyway, I'm not positive of how they did it, but I think when I saw an interview with them on the internet, it seemed like there was a dummy battery port solution. So we'll have to see. If it's a dummy battery port solution, then I'm not as excited about it as other solutions.
Right.
So
cool.
There's that. Yeah.
Right.
So there's that on the power, but I think people can kind of figure out the power. They just have to like come to terms with the fact that it's going to make this nice sleek camera bigger.
Yeah.
So is it worth it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Again, trade-offs, right?
Trade-offs, yes.
Yep.
One thing for sure, though, is I'm definitely going to, get a bunch of good batteries. In fact, the problem is that the Canon batteries cost like $50, $60 each. So, and the Canons are the best. Like out of all the batteries that I tested on this camera,
right?
The only ones that actually still were worth anything were the Canon batteries, and they're like 10 years old.
Oh wow! And they're
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, and they're really lasted that long and stuff.
Yeah, they got 38 and 30, so like 38 and 40 minutes, which is amazing. You're like recording with the SSD and everything. And these are really old batteries. It's crazy.
That's really great.
Yeah. So I actually just wound up ordering a bunch of supposedly new batteries on eBay.
Right.
Yeah.
That's yet to be determined, right?
We'll see.
Yeah. No, that's good.
We'll see. They were basically like 25 instead of $50.
Uh-huh.
So half price. And then I ordered a couple third-party batteries just to test them.
Right.
I know they won't be as good as the Canons, but they're only $10 each. So.
Yeah, and if you have a whole, pocket full of batteries, you should be okay. Even if they don't last half as long as the actual Canon ones, still might work out okay.
Still might work out. They'll be like my last ditch batteries.
Right.
When the Canons start running out, I'll just take these cheap ones out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then other things is I'm probably going to try to figure out how to order this loop from the the Russian company.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, just get yourself one of those pay and go credit cards, and
Yes, I'll get a burner phone,
a burner phone, burner card, and
a burner computer
with just enough money on it for the loop, and then enter that in, you'll be good. That's all you gotta do. Don't worry, I've done it plenty of times.
So I'm gonna get that. I don't know how. They're probably in super demand at this point. And I actually like this camera so much that I'm ordering it. I've ordered a second one.
Oh, are you serious? Really?
Yes.
Wow. It's really that fabulous that you had to get another one.
Yeah,
so,
I just
so let's we're going to do a real quick epilogue, even though we're not nearly done on this. But so how does this rank with now using the GH5, GH5S? Are you going to throw those in the garbage can now, or what? What are you going to do?
Yeah, I think I'm going to just throw them. In fact, I have this one here on my desk here. And I'm just going to toss it in the trash.
Throw it in the garbage can.
Okay. I just threw it in the bin, so it's there. If you want a GH5, you'll have to come over.
That's
and
good.
Pick
Well,
through my trash.
maybe I can get another good deal of $1.25 for a GH5. So, ladies and gentlemen, in Tech Move Universe, be ready for Rod Louie's review of his new GH5. So that's good.
Yeah. So here's the thing. There was a really good deal on B&H. Like, it was really good prices on GH5 and GH5S, and it was running only to a certain date.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had the things in my cart. It was the same deal as the lenses that I got a good deal, but I ordered this before the GH5s, and I said, oh, you know what? I'm just going to get a couple more GH5s. I could always return them if I don't need them, but I might as well get them now since it's a good deal.
Right.
Because I could always use more of these cameras.
Yeah.
And then there was some snafu where they weren't honoring the supposed price.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and because the cart, it said something like this code is still is in use by somebody else.
Oh, good. So see, your Russian hackers have already gotten hold of you already.
Yeah, but the joke's on them, because this time passed, and since then I got the Blackmagic Pocket, and now I don't even want those anymore. So they got them. So the joke's on them.
Right. Exactly.
Because after I got this, I realized, okay, well, if I'm just getting these GH5s for Bs, I've already got a couple of GH5. I don't need that many. The two that I have are good for handheld kind of stuff, or maybe for some static shots under certain situations. But if I'm just going to have B cameras, or maybe even A cameras, why not get a $1,300 A or B camera that's way better than GH5? And it's being used in the same way.
Right.
You know? Like, I was just planning to get these GH5s for B cameras that are just set and forget, because they had long battery life and they had an okay image for certain shots. You know, I wouldn't be like using these cameras for 50% of the footage, maybe like 5%, right? The rest would be my C200s and other things. So, but now I've got this amazing, really inexpensive camera that I could probably power forever if I got the right battery solution. And it also can record forever if I have enough hard drive. One of these Samsung 1 terabytes is pretty cheap, and it can record up to like 3 hours in RAW. Right. You know, with a more compressed version of RAW.
Yeah.
And that's not even until the Blackmagic RAW comes out, which I hope it does come out for this camera soon. Then it's going to be awesome, because you could record so much more with the same quality. So I have this super quality stationary B camera set up, not too big, you know, maybe slightly bigger. They record forever, and I can power them forever, and the quality is way better.
Yeah.
I can do so much more in post with them, because if you do a B camera and you're set up, you're not there. You can't really control the situation and adjust the aperture and exposure and stuff if things change, right? But with a camera like this, if you're recording in RAW, it has so much latitude that you could fix it in post. You could fix a lot of exposure errors in post, whereas you couldn't necessarily do that with a GH5.
Right.
So, so that's kind of my reasoning.
So then does the GH5 now become the C camera now? Or not at all? Or you won't be bringing them at all?
I think it definitely has uses. It's more compact in a situation where I don't need the highest quality. You know, it's a little bit less trouble. So if I'm doing a shoot where it doesn't have to be cinematic, it just needs to capture whatever, then I'll probably still use the GH5 or GH5S. So, or if it's like a vlog where I'm facing the camera to myself, or it's just like kind of like behind the scenes, then I'll give somebody, whoever's the behind the scenes person, I'll give them the GH5. And it's good for that. But definitely kind of like a little bit pushed aside, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's too bad. Well,
sorry.
Well, you know what? Until the GH6 comes around, and then and that will be the new thing.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's so cool, and I always say this, Blackmagic design has raised the bar for these cameras. It's raised the bar. It's like saying, okay, we came out with this, and all these people were buying these A7, whatever,
the R's, the S's, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. And now they're all going to buy this camera.
Yeah.
So it just totally shifted the market.
Yep.
Because why would you buy a $2,000 to $3,000 camera when it's not as good as this?
Right.
And not as flexible as this.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so. I see it. Even though, like for me, me personally, I don't think I'm the market for it because I still like shooting a lot of stills too.
That's right. It's definitely not a good stills camera.
So
it's strictly for video.
Yeah. So I really enjoy these cameras that can do everything, and I think that my GH whatever is still going to be able to do that. So
that's true. That's true. Although for somebody like you, if you wanted to dabble into the cinematic arena,
right.
And just see what the possibilities are. It's actually kind of cool because you could use your lenses.
Right. And you could take some beautiful 4K stills off footage.
You could do that. Yeah. Yeah, you could even do that. And then you could even just, so you could kind of use it as a burst mode.
Right.
Continuous burst mode camera.
Right.
In RAW.
Yep.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
Because I've done that a little bit.
Sure.
And I've actually done that with not even as good cameras as this, and it's come out pretty well. So... Anyway,
no, that's cool. That's very
that's
very, very good.
Yeah. So it's actually, I mean, it's kind of amazing because I just haven't been excited about a camera in quite some time like this.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to hear, and in our upcoming episodes, we're going to hear a lot more about it. I guess as time goes on, we're going to hear about updates and stuff like that. I think, especially your second unit, which is on order and stuff like that. We're going to hear about how you use it. And I will be curious as to, because I am the, Panasonic fanboy, to see how kicked to the curb those other cameras will be for you, if at all.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to be kicked to the curb. I think they have a lot of use. It's just they just got pushed down.
Yeah.
They got pushed down a little bit, and they still have use. I still see them being used for certain workflows, just not necessarily as much for the cinematic workflows. That's all.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, Keith, I think we've reached the end of our latest episode here. And we are going to call it wrap up. We're going to call this wrapped up, and we are going to close it out and tell the folks about what's going to be happening in our next episode, which I'm going to guess is pretty much more of the same. We're going to talk more about
we're going to talk about the Pocket 4K's battery port exploding,
right,
and the Pocket 4K disintegrating in my hands,
and more importantly, the firmware updates you're going to do and how that will be complete.
That brick the camera,
right? Exactly. So we'll
destroy my hard drives,
right?
In a different way.
We will we will talk more about that in our next episode. Well, Keith, that was fantastic. Let's again, folks, thanks a lot for listening to us and go on and on about what we do. And we also want to remind all of you to make sure you subscribe to us on iTunes and give us a rating, will you? We would love to hear your thoughts on the podcast, what you'd like us to cover, maybe what you'd like Keith to discuss as far as maybe a teaching session or something like that. Keith, how else can they reach us, the fine people, to actually touch those of us who are with the Tech Move movement?
How can they touch us?
Right.
Well, they can email us.
Yeah, that's good.
info@techmovepodcast.com.
I don't even know where our addresses are right now. I'm trying to look for it on my little notes, and I don't even have it anywhere. Which is
it's info@techmovepodcast.com. That's pretty much the only one.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So
if
email
you want
us there. That'd be great.
we could create a Rod and Keith, but I think
that nobody wants to talk to me, so that's fine.
Yeah.
That's
and your spam filter will remove all of them. Anyway.
Exactly. Okay, folks. So reach us on, subscribe to us on iTunes. You can also get to us through the various other ways like Facebook and Twitter, and all of them are usually at Tech Move Podcast or some variation of that. Right, Keith?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you just do a search for Tech Move Podcast, you probably will find a bunch of ways to reach us. But you could also, the main way is to go to our site because it's got all the different ways you can reach us. It's also got the episodes and descriptions, notes, show notes, and links, and links to, if there are videos, links to the videos. So it's best to just go to the website.
Yeah, we appreciate that because Keith puts in a lot of time in that website. So we'd love for you to just check out the work. Sometimes we get to, especially all those shows that we go to, like NAB and all that kind of stuff. That's where a lot of those videos are, so you can go check that out if you're interested. You can also, we also encourage you folks to support us using Patreon, and that's at Tech Move Podcast. Keith, any words of wisdom on that one?
Nope, just give us money. You can give us. There's no limit to how much you can give us.
$1 million, $5 million, that would be much appreciated.
There is no limit.
No limit whatsoever. That's good.
No,
that's fantastic. All right. Well, Keith, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Yep. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. We greatly appreciate you spending your time with us and listening to us go on and on. Keith, it is always fantastic to talk to you. I love catching up. I love being able to talk about this new gear and live vicariously through you as you spend all your money doing it while I roll around in my cash, sweaty and having it stick to my body. So, Keith, thank you very much for that. We greatly appreciate it. We will talk to you at the next episode. But until that time, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the great Keith Moreau, I am Rod Louie. Thank you so much for joining us here on Tech Move. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you the next time. Thank you so much.